Hi, my name is Laura Chung, and I am the host of the Awaken and Align podcast. And this is your 2025 horoscopes. I am recording this on December 27th, 2024, and I've had a lot of time to contemplate and to look to the future of what 2025 has in store for all of us. It is a big year of change, and it's going to invite us to take action and own our lives. Okay. Before I begin, though, I wanted to reintroduce myself because I have a lot of new followers. I have a lot more people in my community that probably have come across my page in the last year in 2024. And I think it's important to know where I'm coming from, the context in which I am bringing astrology to you and my perspectives. So here we go. Gosh, I've really been contemplating this. Like, if I could describe what I do in one word, it's very difficult because I feel like, as a 3-5 generator, if you know human design, I've acquired and experienced a lot of different careers and a lot of different things in my life to come to this point at the end of 2024 to synthesize and to integrate all of the knowledge and experiences that I've gone through to bring this very, I guess, like my perspective on astrology, which is really through experimentation and through living through your life and through truly loving yourself and honoring your soul and its purpose. And I ultimately believe that our purpose is to be ourselves. And I do believe that there is a divine timing to things. I do believe there are cycles that challenge us, and there are cycles that honor us, and we experience the fruits of our labor. And then I do believe in free will. So my kind of astrology is both honoring the cycles of nature and honoring the cycles of time, but also we have the power to mitigate and take action towards the kind of life that we desire to live. Um, I studied astrology. Well, I really was always interested in astronomy, astrology, because in ancient times they were one and the same. But I really started taking it seriously in 2018, which was my nodal return. I was 36. It was my Jupiter return. And 36 is a crucial year in the beginning of your middle age crisis transits. And 36 is also when you have a repeat of your Chinese zodiac animal. So that was the year of the dog, the water dog. And again, like, that was a pivotal time of me stepping away from the old versions of myself, my old life, and stepping into the newer version of me. And by newer and older, I don't mean like good or bad. I just mean the next stage of my life. And when I was 35, so 2017, I quit my corporate job. I worked in a very normal job. I worked in private equity in Manhattan. I had a very cushy life, but there was always a part of my soul that felt empty. Like I wasn't really living my soul's calling. And very, I hate to say it, but like, it was kind of like a crisis point where I was constantly juggling between like wanting that safety and security, wanting that paycheck every month, wanting my health insurance. And then the other part of me was like, you're only getting older. Um, and life is short and precious. And we're here for such a short amount of time. And it is your opportunity now, because you have so much privilege and luck, that you can really step into the unknown. And ultimately, I believe that is the kind of energy that 2025 brings as well. So I took that leap, and I didn't have a plan. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I just trusted that as I was moving through the world that signs and synchronicities and the right people would be put in my path. And it really was this trusting in that path, that I was being led to something somewhere. And I guess like the long-winded version of that has been 7 years. So that is a Saturn square. If you're into astrology and you know the cycles, that is where I am today. It's this 7 year of this slow progression of truly understanding why I'm here, my gifts, owning the fact that this is what I do. And the recent transits of December really started to make me doubt myself again. And sometimes doubt comes in to really reaffirm your belief and your faith in yourself. And so I'm just sharing honestly and vulnerably like what I've been going through, because I ultimately think that it's through sharing our stories that we help people not feel alone, because you only see probably like 10% of who I really am on social media. I'm coming on this platform already having like integrated something and understanding something and then sharing it, with the world, because I become a lot more private on my social media channels to protect myself. So I'm coming on social media, Instagram, TikTok, with just a part of my personality and not really sharing all of the vulnerable in between moments where I am doubtful, I am scared, and I am getting triggered, because I'm going through these transits just as everybody else. And so I think doing these longer form videos and walking through the transits with all of you is something that I really want to recommit to in 2025. So I don't know if telling you all of my accolades is going to be helpful. You could just read that on my website, but really what I was searching for is understanding the mysteries of the universe, and in reality understanding myself, because you can't understand the mysteries of the universe without understanding yourself, and vice versa. Like, I believe we are the universe expressing itself. It's a quote by Rumi. And I believe that we are here to truly expand and experience and create and die and rebirth over and over again. And if we have the courage to do that, that is like the whole point, right? And I really believe the Mars Pluto opposition, the three that we are going through from 2024 to 2025, is helping us become more courageous and moving through our fears. And just to share personally, like I said, I am going through these transits just like everybody else. I have cardinal sign placements, I have fixed sign placements, I have mutable sign placements. So when all of that was happening at the same time, Saturn is conjunct my Mercury right now. So it just made me not want to talk very much. It made me not want to create very much. It made me want to contract and kind of be more silent and more conserving of my energy. And if you've been with me, if you've watched me for however long I've been making videos, probably since 2018, I've always been very open. I've shared a lot. I've been very vulnerable. And through time, I've had to have more discernment and have more boundaries with people and the public, I guess. But Saturn conjunct my Mercury right now, as Saturn is moving through Pisces, it's made me more conservative and more conserving of my energy. And I'm putting out less because I want what I do to have more depth and more like quality over quantity, which is like completely opposite to how I was operating from 2020 to 2023. I would say like that was my TikTok era, and I was just constantly pumping out content incessantly, and it was so fun. And I am so grateful for that platform, for opening up so many doors for me. Honestly, like I remember being in the creator, the first TikTok creator incubator, I guess, where they paid creators to be in their creator platform in 2020. That was exactly 5 years ago in 2020 now, December of 2020 at the Jupiter Saturn conjunction in Aquarius. And just thinking like, wow, platform like this is going to open so many doors for so many people. And it did. And now coming to this like Pluto and Aquarius and how they're, Congress is banning TikTok essentially. It's just so interesting again with the cycles and what's happening. So I have been going through these transits myself and just pulling back my energy and really like reconfirming first like my own purpose, what I'm doing here, and also I want to make sure that I am delivering messages that are helpful and not from my ego and not from a place of like I want to be right and trying to have dogmatic ways of projecting my like belief systems, which is difficult because I'm a Sagittarius rising, and I say that disclaimer probably every video that I have. And I also want to come from a place that is rooted in love first and foremost, of justice, of inspiration, and of healing. Like I truly believe that we could use astrology to predict certain events, to end cycles of harm and end cycles of violence. And I'm rereading some old astrology textbooks, and like the main use of astrology like way back in ancient Mesopotamia, which is like the first iterations of Western astrology, they used astrology as a predictive tool for medical astrology and for war. So if we are to honor the roots of Western astrology, which is predictive astrology, how can I be a better and more like aligned person to help people? Because if people are predicting things in a doom and gloom way, that's not helpful, right? And if people are only optimistic, like the love and light, that's not helpful either. So I want to come somewhere where we have the power to co-create with the universe, but also honor the divine timing of everything, that there is a death cycle, that there is a reckoning, and that there is all of these things that are negative, quote unquote, that we tend to, as humans, repress or move away from. But how can we gain the courage to take more ownership and authority over our life? And that was really the lesson of the North Node in Aries for the last like 18 months. So that's a little bit of where I'm coming from, and the ways in which I want to show up now is really from the roots of like, I studied traditional astrology. So it's during the Hellenistic period. That is the like basically the Greco-Roman period, when Greece and Rome occupied Egypt and parts of the Middle East, which is now modern day Middle East, or the MENA Swana region. But I also have my degree in psychology. So I did learn and study Jungian psychology, depth psychology, and I do use the outer planets and I use asteroids and fixed stars, because it's like when humans see them, discover them through modern innovation, like a telescope, it does awaken a part of our consciousness. So I'm not like a traditionalist in the form of like, I don't use the outer planets, because I do. And also I honor the timing techniques and the roots of where those came from. So I use the whole sign house system in that, because of that. And also I do honor the lineage that I feel some modern astrologers don't have that foundation of like these are techniques that were used thousands of years ago. And so using astrology from an empirical standpoint of these are time and tested techniques only helps to make our practice more acceptable and more, it's not like a pseudoscience, you know what I mean? But also it is a divinatory practice, and there's some kind of mystical, magical part of it that, as Sam Reynolds, the astrologer, says, like, astrology never repeats, but it rhymes. And so when you're asking a specific question at a specific time, it is very much a divinatory tool of asking the celestial bodies at the specific time. And horoscopes means observing the hour. So that is where I'm coming from. And if that is all cool with you, if you like that type of astrology, if you are in alignment with what I'm doing here, because I do talk about politics, and yes, I am biased, I have a specific politic, then I invite you to join me, because I'm going to go through the 12 zodiac signs, and I'm going to start with Aries, and we'll see how long these videos go, because again, 2025 is a huge year for change. And if you choose to accept this mission, you can honestly change your life, because whether you believe in astrology or not, it's happening. And it's up to us to tap into the energies and to first acknowledge that we are all here on this timeline. Like, we all chose to come here for better or for worse. And we all came with special gifts and talents that only you have. And the whole point of it is to remember your gifts and how best to use them and channel them. So that is, the introduction. And if you want to skip to your specific sign, then you can look at the timestamp. I'm still not sure how I'm going to organize this. I was wondering if I should organize this by cardinal sign, like cardinal, mutable, fixed, or through the fire signs, like by element, fire, water, air, earth, or just go in order. So, but either way, I'm going to start with Aries. What makes 2025 memorable? What makes it so, like, such a big deal is that the outer planets are moving to different signs. And this is not like out of the ordinary per se, but 3 of them are moving into different signs at once. And Pluto is already there. Pluto moved into the sign of Aquarius on November 19th, 2024. So Pluto is over there. It has already started its 20-year cycle in your Aquarius house. Now, on March 30th, Neptune will move from the sign of Pisces into the sign of Aries. And on May 24th, I just want to double check these dates so I'm not saying the wrong ones. On, May 24th, Saturn will enter the sign of Aries. Now, Saturn is not an outer planet, but still, Saturn moving into the sign of Aries is a big deal. And then Uranus will move into the sign of Gemini from Taurus on July 7th. And then Jupiter will move into the sign of Cancer on June 9th. So that's Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, 5 planets in different signs. Now, in astrology, the signs have, I guess, like feminine and masculine qualities. And by feminine, we mean like yin, receptive, adaptable, receiving, versus masculine, which is the yang, which is more exterior. It is more outwardly or action oriented. And so Uranus, Neptune, Saturn, and Pluto were in feminine signs of earth and water. More specifically, Neptune and Saturn are currently transiting the sign of Pisces, And Uranus and Pluto were in the signs of Earth. So Uranus was in Taurus, Pluto was in Capricorn. And now Uranus is moving into Gemini. Pluto already moved into the sign of Aquarius. Those are air signs. And Neptune and Saturn are moving into fire, cardinal fire, which is Aries. So we're going from more adaptable, conservative, and I mean, not conservative in terms of like social awareness, but conservation, storing, and being more receptive and sitting with, and yin, feminine, okay? Moving towards more action oriented signs. That's a big deal. That is like a vibe shift. And they're all pretty much shifting in 2025. And then starting in the fall, Neptune, Saturn, and Uranus will move back into their signs of Pisces and Taurus. So then they move back by the end of 2025. So we get this preview of what 2026 and beyond will be all about. So Neptune has about a 14-year cycle. Uranus has a 7-year cycle, Saturn like about 3, Jupiter 1, Pluto is 20. So the fact that they're all moving into different signs at once, this is like a different decade and beyond. This is starting a whole new epoch of your life. And so you want to look at your Pisces and your Aries house, and also your Taurus to Gemini house. Because I mean, I've spoken about Pluto so much in the last like 3 years. So I feel like Pluto is already there. Pluto is doing its thing in Aquarius. And I'm just like preparing you for this shift from Pisces to Aries. And then when Uranus moves to Taurus to Gemini. And another thing you should know is when air and fire come together, they are supportive. They are in a sextile relationship. So Neptune and Saturn will sextile Uranus in Gemini and Pluto in Aquarius, and Pluto and Uranus will be in a trine. So the fact that all these planets are moving into these signs of fire and air, it's going to be supportive. It's going to, and okay, again, like just because it's supportive doesn't mean it's good or bad, because it could just exacerbate the energies of Aries and the, fire, the air signs that are, if you think about it, air fuels fire. The more air that gets into fire, the more it grows and the more that it roars, I guess. So they are supportive. And so what we want to meditate on before these planets move into their next signs is to meditate on how this is occurring within us first, because these are collective signs. Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto are collective signs. We share that planet and the sign with our generation. So as within, so without, right? So we are part of a subgeneration of, like, I am a part of the Uranus and Sag, Neptune and Sag generation, and the Pluto and Libra generation. So as I begin to think about how these things are impacting my own psyche and my own inner realm, how can I then transmute that to be expressed in the collective? Because if we all come together with a collective purpose, intention, that's how we start to change things. So that is why 2025 in a nutshell is so impactful, because of these outer planets moving into different signs. And we begin the year with the Mars retrograde still. And the Mars went Mars stationed retrograde on December 6th, and it will station to go direct on February 23rd. And Mars is transiting two signs, Cancer and Leo. So you want to also look at your Cancer house and your Leo house, specifically the degrees of 6 degrees of Leo and 17 degrees of Cancer. This is where Mars is really starting to it might trigger you, honestly, because first Mars shows you where you feel frustrated, where you feel angry, where you need to take back your power. And then once like during the retrograde is when you that triggering time. And then when Mars goes direct is when you start taking these action steps. So Mars will continue its retrograde as we begin 2025, and yay for us. On January 3rd, Mars in Leo will oppose Pluto in Aquarius. Now, this already happened back in November 3rd of 2024. That was right before the US election. And Mars was in Cancer and Pluto was in Capricorn. This time, Mars and Pluto are in different signs, but it's a continuation of that story. I just want to double confirm that date, so I'm not giving you the wrong date. I have so much data in my head that this is why I need to dump it all, because I can't keep track of everything. Okay, so when was the Mars Pluto? Yes, so it was November 3rd. Mars in Cancer was opposing Pluto in Capricorn at 29 degrees, the anaretic degree. That's why it was so dicey. And so this time around, they are in different signs. That happens January 3rd, I believe. And then Mars will re-enter the sign of Cancer on January 6th. So whatever was going on during that November 3rd time might be coming back. It might be an extended story around the election. It could just, there is a transfer of power right now since Donald J. Trump won the presidency. So it can just signify the transfer of power, since the inauguration, I believe, is on January 21st. I just want to double check that. Inauguration Day, which is interesting because that is the same day, I believe. January 20th is the day of the Sun-Pluto conjunction in Aquarius. So that is pretty significant. January 21st, the day after the inauguration, the sun will conjunct Pluto at 0 degrees. So there is some kind of new dawn of power. Who knows what that will mean? We will just have to see. And I will be doing I will continue to do the monthly horoscopes with Stephanie Campos, where we go down to each day. But for now, I just wanted to point out these days because this is where we're starting 2025. And another highlight of 2025 is that there will be a Venus retrograde in the sign of Aries. And at the same time, there will be a Mercury retrograde in Aries. So whatever the North Node in Aries was prompting us to manifest in the last 18 months, we will really need those Aries attributes come 2025, because there will be a Venus retrograde in Aries, at the same time a Mercury retrograde in Aries. There's a stellium of planets between March and April of 2025. And then, like I mentioned before, Saturn and Neptune will move into the sign of Aries. So your Aries house is going to be very active. And what is Aries? Aries is taking ownership of your life. It is the pioneer. It's the leader. It goes after what it wants and desires. It is a cardinal fire sign. I'm an Aries sun. Thank you very much. And it is really about taking action. Like, I don't know how else to say this. And a lot of people will be afraid of that because taking action means that you have to change something, and taking action towards change is uncomfortable. It inevitably is. But that is what 2025 and the energy is foretelling us to do. So then the Aries part of your chart is being lit up, and the nodes change on January 11th from Aries and Libra to Pisces and Virgo. So that is a whole different vibe shift because Aries and Libra are cardinal signs, and the North Node was ruled by Mars and the South Node was ruled by Venus. And now the North Node in Pisces will be ruled by Jupiter, and the South Node in Virgo will be ruled by Mercury. So very different signs. This is all about the axis of Pisces and Virgo is about your health, spirituality, dreaming, paying attention to the signs and omens. It's about consciousness. It is about Pisces is all about the dream realm. It's about imagination and decreasing of archetypally and integrating the Virgo, which is all about perfectionism and perfection, right? And then because the nodes will change into Pisces and Virgo, we will have eclipses in March and September. And our last eclipse will be in Aries, will be on March 29th. It will be a solar eclipse in Aries. So we will start another 18-month cycle in another nodal, collective nodal lesson, if you will. So let me see if I'm missing anything. So that is like the general read for everybody for 2025. Obviously, different planets will impact you if you have a different, like depending on your rising sign, depending on your time lord, based on your perfection year, based on your progressions. So just take this as like a holistic view of what your 2025 will entail. Obviously, when you get more granular, like when you look at if you have placements in certain houses and certain signs, what aspects they are making to the transits. And again, like I was saying, if you have a specific time lord based on that year, then you want to look at what that planet is doing in, transit wise. So just take this as like an overall big picture look at what to expect in your 2025. And if you want a personal reading to look at your specific natal chart, my books are open for now, in starting in January of 2025. And I would look at your rising sign because that is where you're going to get the most accurate read of where these transits are impacting the area of your life and possibly the people in your life. The second sign I would look towards, especially if you don't know your birth time, is your sun sign. So you could place your sun sign in the first house, and then your sun sign will basically show you like your career, how maybe your fame, or how you're going to your soul's purpose, for example. I would look at the moon last because our moon represents our body. So you could look for your moon sign in terms of your health, your emotional body, your relationships possibly. But I would look at your rising sign first. And you can go on astro.com or astroseek.com and you could type in the calculator if you have your exact birth time, place, and location. Because that will be the most accurate. So without further ado, here is your horoscope for 2025. Aries, this is your year to step up into the leader, the pioneer, the entrepreneur, following your desires in whatever capacity that your heart's desire. Honestly, the month to look out for you specifically is March of 2025 because the last solar eclipse will be in your sign. So, since I would say 2023, right, was the first eclipse in your sign, um, you have had the North Node transiting through your first house. And this was exacerbating and manifesting, or at least attempting to help you to become the person that you were always meant to be. And now on March 29th at 9 degrees, you will have your last solar eclipse. A solar eclipse is essentially a new moon. So you also want to look at the degree of your ascendant. So each sign will go from 0 to 29 degrees and it'll say the minutes as well. So if you have your ascendant like 3 degrees around 9, so let's say 6 to 12 degrees of Aries, the solar eclipse will essentially signal a new beginning in your body, your perception of yourself, who you are as a person in this incarnation. The first house is it is the most important house in astrology. That's where every other house derives from. Like, this is all about you, essentially. I mean, Aries is the sign of I am. You are ruled by the planet Mars, which is trying to get you to self-actualize. The next day on March 30th, Neptune will enter your sign. Wow. So this is a big deal. This is like a preview of what Neptune in your sign, in your first house, will entail. And as somebody who has Neptune in her first house, thank you very much. Neptune is all about your ideals, the myths, the omens, the symbolism, poetry. It's the illusions and delusions. It is fantasy, imagination. And so Neptune in the first house can definitely make you not see yourself clearly, or you might have some like grandiose ideas of who you are or some fogginess. But on the other hand, you can really become anybody that you want to be. Obviously, like, you want to be aligned with your values and your morals, because Neptune in the first house can make somebody like believe that they are greater or that they are more like a guru type than they are, especially in the sign of Aries. But ultimately, as Saturn starts to move into Aries, which will happen at the end of May, Saturn will bring more boundaries and discernment into the grandiosity of Neptune. And I personally believe that Saturn and Neptune coming together in Aries will make you into a very influential, I don't want to say powerful because we're all powerful, right? Like, I just want to say influential leader, because you are at the front lines of 2025. So whatever like new beginnings and endings were happening with the eclipses in Aries and Libra, and maybe with the South Node in Libra in your seventh house, you released a lot of relationships. You might have broken up with a long-term partner, marriage partner, or you lost friendships or really significant people in your life, especially with that gnarly solar eclipse in October of 2023. You releasing those people helped you to remember who you truly are, hopefully, right? Because the whole point of the first and seventh house and having eclipses there is integration of both polarities, Aries and Libra. Like, you cannot just be out here for yourself, like that's the dysfunction of Aries, is somebody who only thinks about themselves. So Libra, being the sister sign, is all about like preparing yourself to be the leader but also understanding what true aligned partnership is about, true relationships, right? And that ultimately, I believe, is important for you, especially since Mars has been transiting through your fourth house in Cancer and your fifth house of pleasure and creativity. I think if Mars was transiting your fourth house in Cancer, which is, not in a Mars's happy place, right? Mars is fallen in the sign of Cancer. And if you have your ascendant around like 17 degrees to 29 degrees of Cancer, you were experiencing that square to your ascendant. And it could have been quite triggering. You might have had like family stuff come up or childhood wounding come up and things, separation with your family or not feeling at home anymore. All of these things could have brought those things up because Mars, again, what I was saying in the intro, is it brings up all these trigger points and things of frustration in order for you to have the courage to move past it, to finally integrate it, to finally face it, face your fears, face your frustration, face your anger and resentment and whatever emotions that you might have repressed or just tried to ignore from the past, because the fourth house can signify the past. We're coming up. And Mars is a very important planet for you specifically, since it is your chart ruler, Mars. And I have experienced Mars retrogrades to be really triggering and more annoying than Mercury retrogrades. So as Mars goes into Leo, it trines you. So Mars in Leo in your fifth house is helping you to fire up some old passions, romance, creative projects. Because it's retrograde, though, you might have contemplated these things. And then once Mars goes direct, which is not until February, then you might feel inclined to take more action steps and really like put into action the things that you've been contemplating. But, being an Aries rising, depending on where your natal Mars is, you're probably action oriented anyway. But let's say you have, I don't know, you're just busy and you haven't had the time to contemplate these things, then it's never too late, because Mars is retrograde and Mars transit through these two signs is really long. Like Mars would have been in Cancer and Leo for like 9 months, I think. Like, whereas without a retrograde, Mars spends 6 weeks in a sign. So, yes, like I said, March 2025 is a big month. There's a lot of Aries action. Then the Mars retrograde is kind of like stirring shit up so that you can like really face your fear. And Pluto, is in your 11th house. So Pluto has been in Capricorn since 2008 to 2024 in your 10th house of your public persona, your career legacy, like what you are known for essentially. And it has been trying to transform that area of your life. So Pluto moving into your 11th house, maybe your long-term goals have changed. Maybe your career aspirations have changed. Maybe you aren't as like upward mobility thinking anymore, but more like just really want to contribute to the community, 11th house. And so with Mars opposing Pluto in your 5th and 11th houses, this is all about like creativity and friendships and romance. And have you had some wounding around that? And maybe Aries risings with Libra in the 7th house, you've had some scuffles with people like your one-on-one friendships, partnerships, or business partners? Is this time maybe with the Mars Pluto opposition to like look at the ways that maybe you have caused harm or the ways that you triggered and you projected your anger onto other people? I don't know. These are just some of the ways in which it can manifest, but it will be specific to you based on like where you're at in your Mars retrograde journey. So let's see. And I think ultimately, with Uranus moving into Gemini in your third and Pluto being in your 11th, this is really great for building community and speaking up and showing up in your community in a bigger way. Uranus is the planet of revelation, change, and awakening. And being in your third house, like you could be either moving neighborhoods or you could be third house is also siblings, right? So you could be having different changes within your siblings. It can make you just like be attracted to different kinds of people, want to think in a different way, or be attracted to listening to different kind of podcasts or thought leaders. And then when it makes a trine to Pluto in Aquarius in your 11th, like maybe you're just into different kinds of people. You want to be in revolutionary circles, for example, like the current people that the people that you were surrounding yourself with during like before the eclipses are just not in alignment with your values anymore. And so the clearing of the eclipses is making way for different kinds of thought leaders, different kinds of thinkers, different kinds of just like groups where you can help expand your mind. And that is what Pluto and Uranus are trying to do in your communication houses. And so the nodes are changing from your first and seventh houses to your 12th and sixth. And I went through this. I went through this, but the opposite, the north node in the sixth and the south node in my 12th. And ultimately, what that really helped me to do with these eclipses was to release any fears. The 12th house is like the house of loss and the unseen, and where if we do not liberate ourselves from the trappings of our mind, we feel stuck. And so the eclipses here really helped me to face my fears in real ways and release that, because I had so many fears around talking about certain topics. And then once I just started doing it more and more and more, now I'm not afraid, clearly. So there is something to be said about stepping more up into this leadership role that you were always meant to be. Again, Aries is the pioneer. Aries is the first one. Aries is the one that jumps and knows instinctively that the universe will catch them. So this is the time to really release any lingering fears from the past, any fears that you have inherited from your parents or your ancestors. And then Jupiter will move from your third to your fourth house. And I love Jupiter moving into Cancer is honestly my favorite. It's my favorite aspect, favorite ingress of the year, because Jupiter is exalted in Cancer. So whatever Mars is doing right now in your home sector, it's like kind of clearing, it's like energetically clearing out. Jupiter coming here is like growth and fertility. And the fourth house represents your foundations, home, parents, roots. But in Vedic astrology, it represents your happiness. And so the fourth house being the bottom, the root of your chart, it's very important to nourish the fourth house. And so if we think about Cancer, Cancer is all about the home, the hearth, care. So you might, during this Jupiter transit, you might want to beautify your home. You might want to move homes into a home that fits your needs, um, and just make your home your sanctuary, honestly. Let me see if there are any other last things that I want to say. I mean, this is your year. Like I said, like this is your chance to face your fears. Mars, Mars, again, starting the year with Mars, moving back into Cancer, and then it will move back into Leo once it goes direct. This is such a crucial time for Aries risings and Scorpio risings because Mars is your chart ruler. And Mars is, yes, it is the planet of war. It is the planet of conflict. Has a separating quality, but Mars is a sexual planet as well. And when we really are honest with our desires and what we desire for our life, that is the compass that we need to direct our life with. Whereas Venus is about attraction, right? It's a feminine sign. So it's like receiving and trusting and, excuse me. But Mars gets after it. Mars is like, I'm not waiting. I want this. I desire this. And because of that nature, it requires action. So, I mean, you're an Aries rising, I'm an Aries sun, so I can relate to this. But it really boils down to what are you desiring? Is it because you're desiring from a place of lack, of a place of inferiority, or is this a true desire from the heart? And that's where Aries rules the head. You have to get out of your head to your heart space. And I have a very difficult time doing that because we'll rationalize things of like why we need to do something, but sometimes this is why retrogrades are so important, because it's like my friend Stephanie Campos always says, like, retrogrades are anti-capitalist because we shouldn't always be on the go. We shouldn't always be in the yang masculine, like constantly working. We need to take these reflective moments to be honest with ourselves and ask ourselves why we're going after things. Like, what are we co-creating? Are we creating more harm? Or should we take a pause and really reflect? So this reflection period will last until about like February, right, with Mars going direct, but then immediately in March, you have that Venus Mercury retrograde in Aries. So it's not until I would say like April or May where it's like all of the initial shaking up of the eclipses in March and planets moving into Aries, where you're going to start to settle into what this transit will mean for you. But again, you are at the front lines of this change. And so no pressure, but this is probably why things have been so chaotic, or it might have felt like there was a lot on your shoulders, or you were going through a dark night of the soul because the universe was preparing you for 2025. So good luck with everything. Let me know in the comments how this resonates for you, and I will see you later. Bye. Hello, Taurus. This is your 2025 astrology forecast. And make sure to watch the beginning of this video to listen to the disclaimers and basically how to listen to your forecast. So if you're here, then you have a Taurus rising or you have Sun in Taurus if you don't know your exact birth time. So I feel like we need to do a little debrief because there was a lot going on in your first house in, I would say, the last like 2 years. So the last couple of years, we saw the North Node moving through your first house and the South Node moving through your seventh house. So you might have experienced some changes with your relationship status, whether you became single again or you are in a long-term partnership. And then all of those major conjunctions in the sign of Taurus that happened this year. So more specifically, there was a Mars Uranus conjunction that happened July 15th of 2024. There was a Jupiter Uranus conjunction. So the first house, when we have transits like that, are new beginnings with your body and your sense of self. I remember when Saturn transited through my first house. So when Saturn was in Sagittarius around like 2017, that's when I decided to quit my corporate job and kind of start my new adventure. So these transits were a big deal. And you're probably still feeling those transits kind of integrating in your experience because they just happened this summer. So I think also with Pluto moving into your 10th house of career, public persona, you had a Venus retrograde in Leo in the summer. Like there was just a lot going on in the bones of your chart. So the angular houses in astrology are the 1st, 4th, 7th, and 10th. And when we have these major transits going through the skeletal structure of our chart, that means that there are big life changes and pivots. So I want to first begin with the Venus retrograde that's happening in March in the sign of Aries, because Venus is your chart ruler. So I want to start there because you also want to see what Venus is doing throughout the year. And I mentioned in the intro to this video that you also want to look at your time lord by profection year. So that's something separate, but Venus is always important to you specifically because it is your chart ruler. So Venus will go retrograde from March 1st to April 12th in Aries, which is your 12th house. And whenever you have transits in the sign before yours, so in your 12th house, this is you basically operating from a different perspective. And because Venus rules you, Taurus, and also Libra, when Venus is in the opposite signs of Aries and Scorpio, Venus is not weaker, but Venus is a little clumsy, is trying to figure itself out. And so Venus wants to form bonds. Venus is the planet of love and fertility and bonding together. But when Venus is in Mars's sign, which is about independence and action, like Venus is not comfortable here. So it's said to be in its depression or detriment. And the 12th house is a place of loss, is the place of endings. It is the place of the unseen realms and isolation and loneliness. So during this transit, you might feel more like you need to rest more, that you need to be alone more, that you need to kind of maybe even go on a retreat somewhere by yourself if you can and if you have the means to. But also the 12th house is like the unseen realm. So you might be having very vivid dreams since Venus is your chart ruler, like I mentioned. You might also have visits from or communication from ex-lovers, ex-friends. And you might just be more reflective during this time. Depending again on your time lord, you don't necessarily want to start relationships during this time, but it's more of reflection. So at the same time, Mercury will also go retrograde from March 15th through April 7th, also in Aries. And so Venus is going retrograde between two signs, and so is Mercury between Aries and Pisces. And so Aries is your 12th house, Pisces is your 11th house, and they are retrograde simultaneously. So again, this is not the time to sign contracts, especially if they are like marital contracts. Also because again, Venus rules you, and Venus also rules your Libra house, which is your sixth house of work. So if you're thinking about signing contracts for like a new job, I know we can't just like hold off our life in this late stage capitalistic society, but if you can wait, then I would wait until both planets go direct in April. And fun fact, when my book was being published, I knew that there was going to be a Mercury retrograde. And thankfully, my editor is also into astrology. I mentioned to her that I would prefer if my book was published before Mercury went retrograde. And she obviously agreed, because when you're doing Venusian or mercurial things and you want to launch something, you don't necessarily want to do it during a retrograde unless you want to return back to it or you are revisiting it in some way. So that's just my 2 cents. Mercury rules your second house of finances, and also it rules your fifth house of romance, creativity. So again, if you are like wanting to sign contracts with either a new relationship or work relationship that is going to be directly tied to your finances, I would just put a pause on that and rethink and review and reflect. So those are that's happening right away in the spring of 2025. Now, what is ongoing is the Mars retrograde that started on December 6th of 2024. And that will happen until February 23rd when Mars stations to go direct. Mars rules your 7th house of one-on-one partnerships and also your 12th house of hidden enemies and what is hidden. So when Mars goes retrograde, which is going retrograde in your 3rd and 4th houses, the 3rd house is about siblings, your neighborhood, writing and communication. The 4th house is home, family, roots. Those topics of the 7th and the 12th house are pulled in from Mars into the 3rd and 4th houses. So this is a time when you might be reflecting on your relationships with your family, like your siblings, your family, your parents. Maybe you're thinking about moving neighborhoods or homes. And these are just things that you might be reflecting on since it is a retrograde. And this will also it's related to your partnerships if you have one, or if you have like a business partnership, then the themes of the 7th house will be related to this Mars retrograde in your 3rd and 4th. So for example, if you are a Taurus rising and your partner gets a new job, for example, and you have to move across the country, then that Mars retrograde in Leo in your 4th house is the contemplation of moving and having to move. Mars has a separating quality. So this is why I'm saying you might have to let go of something. You might have to take action in some way. But ultimately, if you're not in a partnership and this has just something to do with you, you might be thinking about, how you've related to your siblings, or maybe there was a separation for a long time from your family members, and you're just kind of reflecting on childhood trauma and how that has impacted your ability to be in one-on-one partnerships for example. Mars is fallen in the sign of Cancer, similar to how Venus is not in its like Venus in a Mars ruled sign is in its depression. Mars in Cancer is fallen. So when you're going through this Mars transit in Cancer in your third house, which goes back into your third house on January the 6th, and it won't leave Cancer until April, which is like a long time for Mars to be in a sign. This is going to definitely trigger some feelings of like insecurity around your sibling relationships, or maybe the inability to speak your truth, because the third house is about writing and speaking. And the whole point of a Mars retrograde is to reclaim your power and to face your fears and to be courageous and brave, to step up into the person that you were always meant to be. And that's kind of what I said in the beginning as an overall general view of what this Mars retrograde is meant to be about. And so again, like Pluto has been in your ninth house for 16 years, since 2008. And the ninth house is about your belief system. So Pluto has been transforming your beliefs, what you believe, and it has moved into your 10th house of career. So your career, your public persona, what your legacy is transforming over the next 20 years. And so Mars was in an opposition to Pluto at the 29th degree on November 3rd. And it's going to go into its next opposition on January 3rd, but in different signs. Mars will be in the sign of Leo, opposing Pluto in Aquarius. So your 4th and your 10th house are going through this very intense opposition. So there's themes around your home, family, roots. It is the foundation of your chart, the 4th house, opposing Pluto, transforming your career, transforming your public persona. So as a Taurus rising, you could feel this tension, especially if you have your ascendant degree in and around, like, I would say, like 0 to 6 degrees. I mean, that's a pretty wide orb, but if you have your Taurus ascendant around that, that's making a T-square to this opposition. So, and especially your descendant as well. So again, your 1st, 4th, 7th, and 10th houses are all in this fixed cross. And all of these areas of your life are in a conflict, you versus your partner versus home and your career. So it's like something is stuck. You feel frustrated that like something's not moving. Something has got to give. So Mars being the trigger point is like, you got to take action. You got to do something differently, and you got to be brave and follow your heart. Mars in the sign of Leo. This is not an easy transit, I have to say. I believe Mars, just from my own personal experience, Mars retrogrades are very difficult. When I was in my Mars perfection year, so when I turned 40, Mars was my time lord. And at the same time, Mars was retrograde in the sign of Gemini, which is my 7th house. I received a cease and desist from somebody that was a part of my community. So it was not an easy time. And so I'm saying, like, you are faced with some conflict, some opposition from somebody, or something. It could also just be your own fears, right? Because Pluto brings up your fears. And this is the time to like ask yourself, how badly do you want this? I think Pluto moving into your 10th house, a lot of Taurus risings are asking themselves, like, what do I want my career to look like for the next 20 years? Like, do I want to keep doing the same thing, or do I want to like, um, do I want to change what I want to do? Because I understand like this is a 20-year transit. So do I want to keep, because Aquarius and you're a Taurus, you're fixed signs. So what I love about fixed sign placements is that they are determined, they are fixed. But sometimes the downfall of that is knowing when to walk away from something and knowing when to say it was a amazing part of my life, but now I want to do something different, and it's time to pivot. So this is a chance for you, and I believe that's what all of the conjunctions in your first house were like trying to get you to see, is that you can pivot, the Mars Uranus conjunction, the Jupiter Uranus conjunction. Uranus has been traveling through your first house since 2018. So it's a 7-year transit through your first house, trying to get you to break free of something, a stagnancy, or this fixed idea that you have to be this person or this one way. It doesn't have to be that way. So just take that into consideration. You don't have to make big moves yet. I know how, especially Taurus people, they get scared of change and they want to move at their own pace. Like, I totally get that. But just take these things into consideration, because clearly with the opposition between Mars and Pluto in your 4th and your 10th, and these like very foundational positions in your chart, it's like, hey, but you can pivot if you want to. If what you're doing now is not what you desire, then like break free, why not? So big planetary ingresses are happening in 2025, which is why I keep mentioning that 2025, similar to how I was talking in 2019 before 2020, I said 2020 is going to be a huge year of change. And I didn't know that it was going to be. I mean, yes, you can follow and track these conjunctions, like Saturn Pluto conjunctions bring pandemics, of some kind, but I didn't quite understand that it was going to be COVID-19 to that level. So 2025, we're going to have major planetary ingresses, which isn't in and of itself like a rare event, but we are having multiple ones happening at the same time. So first, in January 11th, the nodes change from Pisces to Virgo. So the North node was in Aries and the South node was in Libra, changing and trying to get you to have endings and beginnings around work. And also the North node was in Aries in your 12th house, which, like I mentioned, is all about the unseen and loss. So usually when we have the South node moving through the 6th house, it's like this purging, this I experience the South node eclipses as this like release of things that are no longer aligned. So the 6th house being your daily habits, your health, and your work. So some of you Taurus risings might have quit your job, or you changed your health routine, or something drastic happened to your day-to-day activities. And maybe you became more interested in the occult and mysticism and the hidden realms, North node in the 12th house. And now the North node in Pisces is moving into your 11th house of wishes and dreams, and also groups and community and networks. And the South node is moving through your 5th house of children, creativity, romance, and sex. The fifth house is like the best, funnest house in astrology. So now you're going to experience eclipses in your fifth and 11th house. And I have been going through this for the last 18 months. Just the North Node and the South Node in different positions, but in my fifth and 11th houses. And I've experienced drastic changes in my friend groups. Like I have completely different friend groups now. And I I don't know if I guess like the fifth house also represents hobbies. And I guess my hobbies have just become more like at the forefront of my life. Whereas like, I always treated astrology as a hobby, like I always kind of was interested in it. Like that's usually what I like to do. But sometimes hobbies don't translate to your like work, but it has become more of what I do. So those kinds of themes might come up during these eclipses, especially since Saturn has been transiting your 11th house and Neptune in your 11th house of Pisces. So something clearly Saturn and Neptune being co-present here with friendships, your hopes and your dreams, your long-term plans. Saturn and Neptune is like dissolving of structures, especially when it's in the sign of Pisces. So maybe again, going with the theme of like Taurus risings, maybe you're changing like what you desire in life. Maybe what you thought you were going towards is not what you want anymore. And so the North Node here is like maybe you're trying to discover more of like your spiritual meaning and your purpose in life, for example. Okay, so on March 30th, Neptune will enter the sign of Aries in your 12th house. And so I would definitely, starting in March, look out for your 11th and 12th houses, your Pisces and Aries houses, because these places in your chart are highly activated. On May 24th, Saturn will enter Aries. So again, your 12th house. So a lot of 12th house themes that might have already come up during the eclipses of 2023 to 2024. And the last eclipse in Aries will be on March 29th. It's a partial solar eclipse in Aries. It will be the last one. And then the next day, Neptune will enter Aries. And by the time May comes around, you'll have Saturn and Neptune in Aries. Again, there's something about releasing something that is trapping you, the 12th house is a moksha house. It's the house of liberation, very similar to the fourth and eighth. And as somebody who has their chart ruler in the 12th, it's like this is time for spiritual liberation. And what I mean by that is understanding your true nature, which is that you are a part of source energy, universe, God, goddess, whatever you want to say. And you are realizing your true nature and the power that you have within, and that not everything is what you can see, right? You're Taurus rising, very embodied. You're about the body, you're about the physical realm. And this is kind of getting into witchy territory and being comfortable with the unseen. Now, on June 9th, Jupiter will enter the sign of Cancer, which is in its exaltation. And so when planets are in their exaltation, so Venus is exalted in Pisces, which will enter your 11th house. And so what I've realized about planets in their exaltation is they bring out the best in that planet. And so Jupiter in the sign of Cancer brings slow and steady growth. And Jupiter will enter your third house of siblings, your neighborhood, your communication, And so whatever Mars was doing to kind of like break things and sever things, Jupiter is coming here to kind of heal and grow something else. So like if I could visualize this, I would say Mars is like the cutting away, like the purging, the removing of things that are stagnant and don't need to be there anymore. And then Jupiter comes to like be the seed to grow something that is fertile and beautiful and worth growing, you know? So that's why I say, like, just be patient with this Mars retrograde in the sign of Cancer, which seems like fucking forever, which it is. Um, that because Jupiter here is going to just like, again, be so lovely. So if you had contentious relationships with your siblings or you were fighting a lot, this could be a time when you repair that relationship. Or if you've been having a lot of arguments, you know, Mars in the third, people who have Mars in the third are like natally are might also get into a lot of arguments. And so Jupiter here is kind of like soothing it. Maybe, you know, you expand through wanting to express yourself in a different way. Maybe you'll be inclined to start a podcast or a column or a blog or something because Jupiter rules your 11th house of Pisces and your eighth house of other people's money. So, this could be a great opportunity for you to expand how you receive money through sharing wisdom for the community, just as an example. And yeah, that is actually my favorite transit of 2025 is Jupiter in the sign of Cancer, and it will be there for 1 year. On July 7th, Uranus will enter the sign of Gemini. So finally, on July 7th, Uranus will move out of your first house. And interestingly enough, I have Uranus on my ascendant natally. So I'm used to this energy. So I don't know. I would like to hear from the Taurus risings if if I mean, Uranus is already kind of finishing out its transit in Taurus. So I'm assuming that most of you have felt it on your ascendant. Let me know how you've been faring during this transit, because for me, Uranus on my ascendant is like natural. So like I'm trying to even like I know a lot of people who've had Uranus transit their ascendant, they've all of a sudden become interested in technology, in astrology, in just like very Uranian things, like very oddball things that they just never even considered before. So I want to hear from all of you, like when Uranus transited your ascendant, like did you all of a sudden get interested in something different that just never entered your consciousness before? So then Uranus is going to enter your second house. Now Uranus has this like shocking, awakening, revelatory feeling, exciting sometimes, but you're a Taurus. So like you like things to be slow and steady, which is why I believe the medicine of Uranus and Taurus is like even Earth has earthquakes, you know, like even the stability and groundedness of Earth can shatter. So when Uranus moves into Gemini, things are going to start to feel like it's moving very quickly because Gemini is a mutable air sign and it's moving into your second house of your resources, your finances. In Vedic astrology, the second house is your speech and what you put into your mouth. So again, with Jupiter moving into your third of communication and Uranus moving into your second, maybe you're just being more outspoken. Uranus can definitely change your the way is in which you are resourced. Like it could change the way you make money or the way you spend money or your values or what you yeah, like how you make money basically. And that really goes in tandem with what I was saying about Pluto transiting your 10th house of career and also the South Node that was moving through your sixth house. Like maybe you've all just decided, like, this is not what I want to do anymore. And I want to do something different. And so as a result, the ways in which you make money is just completely different, you know? It for me, it's an exciting transit, but we shall see what happens. And that is a 7-year transit, like I mentioned. Okay, so let me just make sure that I've got everything here. We talked about the eclipses. So yeah, the eclipses, the first, well, we already had the first lunar eclipse in Pisces in September. So like think back to what happened September 2024, and then we'll have a total lunar eclipse in Virgo on March 14th, which is your fifth house again. So I don't know, maybe you're reawakening some like hobby or passion you used to have. The fifth house in Vedic astrology, the first, fifth, and ninth are our dharma houses, our purpose houses. And I understand like the first and the ninth, right? Because the ninth house is literally the house of our beliefs, of the house of God and our belief systems. But I was like contemplating why the fifth was. And it really is through our passions and our desires that lead us to our purpose. Like our desires, like the root word of desire means from the stars. So we have these desires and passions for a reason. And so that's what I was saying about like my hobby and my love and passion of astrology and of mysticism and of magic. I didn't really think that I would eventually do it as work, as a career, but here I am, you know, because it's something that ultimately became part of my purpose. And so the fifth house, being a Dharma house, is like really remembering what you're passionate about and what gives you joy. And that's the clues with which we can like follow the breadcrumbs of how our soul is trying to tell us, like, this is where you should be looking, you know? So that those eclipses happening are going to reawaken some passion and your ultimate like desires in life. So one last thing I'll say is that we're having all of these really beautiful conjunct. Well, I don't want to project, but I think they're beautiful because there will be this beautiful, because I wrote it down specifically for your sign. So clearly I thought it was beautiful for you. The Venus, oh, because it's your chart ruler, Venus will be at its exaltation degree of 27 degrees of Pisces sometime in like March. And there will be a conjunction of Venus, Saturn, and Neptune. Wait, triple conjunction, Venus and Pisces conjunct Neptune and Pisces at 27 degrees, which is, again, like I said, Venus at its exaltation degree and the North Node. And then it's going to happen multiple times. But again, what I think this is pointing to is remembering your like hopes and dreams of life. And I know this might sound frivolous to a lot of people. And whenever I say this to people, I've always said this to people throughout my lifetime. They've always been like, you're just unrealistic. Okay. But I am ruled by Jupiter. I'm an unrealistic person. So I think what I'll leave you here with is whenever you're listening to this, just keep reminding yourself that 2025 is for you, Taurus rising, a time to remember your hopes and your dreams, and that it's within the realm of possibility to manifest that, because Pisces is a sextile relationship to you, Taurus. It's a 60-degree angle. So the fact that the North Node and Venus at its exaltation degree, which is your chart ruler, is going to be there. Yes, during a tumultuous time when all these planets are moving into Aries, there will be all of this cutting away, but you have to cut things away and okay, cutting things away is very Martian, but like not get rid of it, but transmute it into something where you say, like, there has to be a death in order for me to make space for the things that I'm calling in. And so many people are so afraid of the unknown that they hold on to what they know, even if it's the devil that they know, especially if you are an earth sign, which you are. So again, like, um, you want to look at your other placements, obviously, because I'm just speaking generally to a Taurus rising and how this will impact your houses and the people in your life. So you want to look at your sun and moon and the different aspects to your natal chart. But overall, like, this is the vibe that I'm feeling for you, which is so exciting. And you didn't go through all of that, like, change in your life for nothing. Like, it was all to prepare you to really cement into your body in your physical form, because that's what Taurus is all about. Like, and rooting in your body the feeling of abundance, the feeling of prosperity, and that your dreams can manifest. So good luck, Taurus risings. And please let me know in the comment section if this resonated with you. And over the course of the months, let me know if any of these things came about. Bye. Hello, Gemini risings. This is your 2025 forecast. And you are here if you are a Gemini rising or a sun in Gemini. If you don't know your exact birth time, then you could place your sun in the first house. And I highly suggest to you to go back to the intro, because I give disclaimers and also the overall picture of 2025. And so this will resonate with you specifically if you have a Gemini rising, because each of the houses is the different areas of your life that will be impacted by the transits of 2025. Now, I do monthly forecasts with Stephanie Campos. So that is like a general overview. And so this is catered to your specific rising sign. And if you want to get even more granular than that, you can book a personal reading with me. So let's start off with your first house, which is Gemini, right? So Jupiter has been transiting through your first house since May of 2024 and will be there until 2025. June of 2025. And so Jupiter expands every area of the chart it touches. And since it's your first house, this is expanding your sense of self and your belief in yourself, because ultimately Jupiter is about faith and trust and belief. Now, when Jupiter contacts your ascendant, I would like to know how you've experienced this, because sometimes Jupiter makes us expand literally. Like, we might feel like, you know, there's an overabundance of, I don't want to say gaining weight, because there's nothing wrong with gaining weight, but there's like an overabundance of something. And since it's Gemini, there could be an overabundance of like ideas, or you might have been overwhelmed by anxiety of thought, or literally your physical body has just gained weight. So just look out for what happens, or if you can look back at when Jupiter was on your ascendant, report back to me, because I'm always curious as how this manifests for you. When Jupiter was on my ascendant, which is Sagittarius, I was like over drinking personally. And because of the drinking, my body was constantly inflamed. So that's why I'm asking. So the biggest transit for you, I mean, that is a pretty big transit, to be honest with you. Jupiter transiting your first house. It is the ruler of your seventh house and your 10th house of career. So your seventh house is Sagittarius and your 10th house is Pisces. And when the ruler of these two houses come into your first house, your career and your partnerships are really dictated by you, like they start to become a huge part of your focus, a huge part of your um like sense of being. So for example, Kamala Harris is a Gemini rising. And so Gemini, I mean, Jupiter going through her first house, her seventh house of one-on-one partnerships, you can say that is her husband, who is very supportive in her career. You could say that's also Joseph Biden. Biden is a Sagittarius rising, so her career was and pulling in from the 10th house of Pisces into career, her career was determined by her partnership with Joseph Biden, the president, and also like the fact that he stepped down of the presidency and then she became the Democratic nominee, for example. Now, the biggest transit for you of 2025 is Uranus moving into your first house. So that happens on July 7th, I believe. But let me give you the exact date. Yes, July 7th, Uranus will transit Gemini in your first house. And that's a 7-year transit. So Uranus has this energy of awakening, of revelation, of sudden changes. Okay. So your body can change. Your perspective and concept of yourself might change. Like something about your physical body might change as a result of maybe you just being interested in different forms of exercise or healing, or psychologically, you just might be like, oh my God, I've just changed my mind. I have Uranus on my ascendant. So this is something that just like is natural part of my life. Like I'm always thinking about weird things. I'm always thinking about aliens. I'm always thinking about technology. I'm always thinking about astrology. Like these are just always parts of my like being, right? So Uranus crossing over your ascendant, depending on your ascendant degree. So if you have Gemini rising at 0 degrees, like Uranus is going to hit it right away. And I've heard from people that when Uranus moves over their ascendant, they become interested in astrology. They just become interested in different things that they hadn't previously even considered. And if you think about how Uranus was discovered, because Uranus was always there, it was discovered by the invention of the telescope, because humans can only see with their visible eyes Saturn. And so when humans through technology invented the telescope, they were able to see that there were, oh my gosh, other planets. So it's like, oh my God, Uranus is this, Promethean energy of like, oh my gosh, now that we have all this technology, now we can actually see other things. It's like a revelatory thing. So just look out for that. It's a 7-year transit, like I mentioned, but it will re-enter Taurus on November 7th. And so Uranus has been transiting your 12th house for the last 7 years since 2018. And so you might have had, really intense dreams. The 12th house in astrology represents the unseen realms. It is a house of loss and endings and releasing and needing to feel like some solitude and rest and recovery. So you might have had some unsettling dreams or very vivid dreams during this transit. I mean, it's a long transit, so it's hard to tell whether it's Uranus specifically or maybe you're going through another transit as well. But yeah, Uranus being here, and then you had all those conjunctions in Taurus back in July of this year and April of this year. April specifically was the Jupiter Uranus conjunction, and July was the Mars Uranus conjunction. So just look back at what happened during that time, because that was a beginning of a new cycle. And again, like, you might have been more interested in things that like you weren't interested in before. Maybe you're interested in studying spirituality or mysticism, or you are interested in staying at an ashram. The 12th house is also places that are hidden. And I did a video about this recently of the 12th house also represents like prisons and the prison industrial complex and people who are hidden from our society. So maybe you became more interested in like marginalized communities and people who are kind of like held back, or not given a place, a platform, or people who are being silenced, essentially. So Jupiter will leave your sign on June 9th, and it will enter Cancer in your second house. And then a month later, Uranus will enter your first house. So whatever Jupiter was expanding in the last year, Uranus is kind of like shaking things up for 7 years. So there's something about like your physical presence that is something about your physical presence and your ideas of yourself that are really at the forefront of your mind, So like I mentioned, Jupiter is entering the sign of Cancer on June 9th, and it's exalted. And this is so lovely for Gemini risings because Cancer rules your second house of your resources. So we begin this year with a Mars retrograde, and Mars is going to go back into Cancer, so your second house, on January 6th. Now, Mars is fallen in the sign of Cancer. So last year, when Mars was in Cancer, so like the fall of 2024, you might have experienced some losses in your own resources, like money, or these thoughts of money have been coming up to the surface a lot. You might have been worried about it. Fears around your finances might have been coming up because ultimately the Mars opposition to Pluto always brings up fears. So now, as Mars re-enters the sign of Cancer on January 6th, it's like, okay, now you're reviewing, you're reflecting on your abundance mindset, your scarcity mentality, your poverty consciousness. And you're kind of like, so I see this Mars retrograde in the sign of Leo and Cancer to face our fears, really, like, especially from those two signs, because Cancer is like how we feel safe. It's the sign of the past and our memory and our body. And Mars in Cancer first opposed Pluto in Capricorn at 29 degrees, and Pluto has been in your 8th house since 2008. Woof. 16 years of Pluto in your 8th house. And so that first opposition, I'm sure, like that was November 3rd. You might have experienced some lingering like scarcity, fear around your resources. Like, am I ever going to make money? Is it ever going to come in? Again, this is like a general reading for Gemini risings. This not might apply to everybody if you have different placements in your chart or different time lords, But now Mars moving back into the sign of Cancer, it's like, and Pluto is in a different sign. It's like, okay, how can I actually face this fear of insecurity? Like, where is this coming from? And because it's in the sign of Cancer, it might be like an old past historical memory from like your mother, your father, family, ancestor stuff, But ultimately, this Mars retrograde is for you to finally like have the courage to step up ask for what you deserve, don't do anything for free, and to like reclaim your value and your self-worth. Ultimately, Mars transiting the second house. And there will be another opposition between Mars and Pluto on January 3rd. But again, they will be in different signs. So Mars will be in Leo. I should have started with that before I moved it into Cancer. But Mars is in Leo, opposing Pluto in Aquarius. And this is exact on January 3rd. So the third and ninth houses, the third house is your Leo house, and the ninth house is your Aquarius house. And this is like your beliefs and how you speak and how you interact with ultimately like your belief systems and how you speak and how your ideas are translated in the outer world, right? And so if you have any fears or if you have any first, if you have a desire to speak up, but you're afraid, this is the time to face your fear. Mars in Leo is all about following your heart and being courageous. Like if you think about the Wizard of Oz and the Cowardly Lion and his whole journey, his whole like hero's journey in trying to get his heart from the Wizard of Oz. Meanwhile, like the wizard really like he was a man behind a curtain, essentially, which is very Neptunian, by the way. It's like, what is actually holding you back from speaking up? Like, what are you so afraid of? Is it the judgment of others? Is it that you feel you don't know enough or whatever the case may be? This is the time to do that reflective work because Pluto will be transiting your ninth house for 20 years. And the ninth house is about your belief systems, your philosophy, law, and all about like your higher knowing. It is a Dharma house. This is your purpose, you know? So that opposition is exact on January 3rd. There will be another one on April. But by this time, both of the planets, Mars will be going direct. So the point of why I was bringing up Mars in Cancer, which is fallen, it's like Mars wants to take action, but because it's in Cancer, it has to deal with all these feelings of being triggered. So Mars retrograde triggers people. And let me tell you, you can see it you can see it playing out, right? And so whatever triggers you have been feeling around your own self-worth, your own value, your own sense of like worthiness are really like they're being dug up by Mars because ultimately Jupiter will come here in Cancer exalted like and Jupiter in its exaltation in Cancer is all about fertility and growth. So just like as a note to Gemini risings, if you have been worried about your finances, if you have been scared, don't worry. It's all going to come back to you. It's all coming back. It's all coming back to me now. Because Mars is really dredging up your fears in order for you to grow your abundance, grow your resources from an aligned place of worthiness. So you might have like, if you've done the reflection, like you might have given your power away to somebody else, opposition to Pluto, thinking that they were better than you subconsciously or consciously, allowed people to or given away your work or your efforts for free 99, which is I'm not all about that anymore. Like, do not ask me to do anything for free 99 unless it's for a good cause, because that is, especially since we all live in capitalism, we all deserve to be paid our worth. And so you reclaiming that back and saying, all right, the past is in the past. I've made some I've made some mistakes and not honoring my self-worth, but Jupiter moving into Cancer is like I'm reclaiming all of that. And again, Jupiter rules your 10th house of career and your 7th house of one-on-one partnerships. So when Jupiter moves there, oh my gosh, it's going to be so sweet for you. I promise you. So just the first the first 6 months of 2025, Jupiter is moving to your first house again, expanding you. There's some kind of expansion of self and really like understanding who you are. And then Jupiter will move into the second, and you being able to receive what you deserve because of all that inner work you've been doing. Now, the nodes will change on January 11th from the North Node being in Aries in your 11th house, the South Node being in the 5th house of Libra, and they're moving into your angular houses of the 10th and the 4th. So when we have planets in our angular houses, which you do right now, you have Saturn up there in your 10th house of career and public persona, your legacy, and you have Jupiter in your first. The angular houses in astrology are the first, fourth, seventh, and 10th, and they make up like the skeletal structure of our chart. It's like if you can picture the Wheel of Fortune, like I have the Wheel of Fortune tarot card on my necklace right here. It's like the wheels are turning. When you have like, especially Jupiter and Saturn square like that, and it has not been easy because there's been multiple squares between these two planets. It's like whatever you've been trying to do for your career, Saturn is like, are you sure? Saturn is like, not so fast. Saturn is like, we got to put in the work. Saturn is like, patience. And that's annoying, especially when it's like something that you really want to do and a dream that you might be having, right? So the North Node moving into Pisces and having Neptune and Saturn co-present there, it's like some old disillusion of structures around what your career might look like might be happening. And when the eclipses are happening between your 10th and your 4th, the two topics of those houses will come into play. So the South Node being in your 4th house of home, family, roots, foundation. Some of you might move during this time. Some of you might spend less time at home or with your family, or conversely, more time with your family and at home as a result of, your career changing, or you might be deciding like, hey, I like want to work from home or something like that. But a South Node is about releasing, is about purging. It's about like, it's a psychological like ego death almost. And so that is why I'm saying the 4th house having the South Node is maybe you like saying, I gotta move. I gotta like pursue my own thing, and I gotta like really focus on my career. North Node in the 10th. If you have a family now, like your own family, that's gonna be a conflictual thing, because again, the 4th and the 10th, the topics are coming together. So if you're like, all of a sudden, you're like, your career is popping and you're like becoming more visible because you have Jupiter in your first and Jupiter rules your 7th house. This can also make you and your partner, if you have one, have also conflict. Like I said, when these things happen in angular houses, it's like multiple areas of our life, especially if you're a mutable rising sign, because Mercury rules 2 of the houses and Jupiter rules the other 2. So it's like multiple things are happening at the same time. So you might have already gotten a taste of this because there was an eclipse in Virgo in September of 2023. So something around family and your career was happening at that time. Okay, so we talked about okay, another thing that's happening. So we talked about Uranus and Gemini, Jupiter and Cancer. Now, the reason why 2025 is such a big deal is because Neptune and Saturn will move into Aries, which is your 11th house. So this is a big deal because the 11th house is actually sextile to you. So it's a very supportive transit for you personally. And actually, being a rising sign that's an air sign, you will have Pluto trine to you, and then you'll have Uranus in your first house. You will have Neptune and Saturn sextile to you. So another reason why Gemini risings should rejoice is that these these outer planet movement into other signs this year is going to be in a supportive relationship to you. So Neptune will enter the sign of Aries on March 30th. And Neptune is the dissolution of boundaries. In the sign of Aries, it's like taking ownership of your life, like who you are. And Uranus and Saturn in Aries will enter your 11th house on May 24th. Later on in the year, starting in the fall, Uranus, Neptune, and Saturn will all go back into their respective signs that they started in, Pisces and Taurus. But there's like a little glimpse into the future of what 2026 and beyond will offer us. So you want to pay attention to that. So Neptune and Saturn in the 11th house, I don't know. Something tells me again for Gemini risings that you're going to be some kind of prominent figure in a group, like a leader of some kind. Saturn in Aries is like the leader, the authority, the person that takes charge in some way. Saturn is in its depression in Aries because Saturn wants to take its time. It's the planet of going slow, right? But Aries is like fast, immediate. That's why it's in its depression. So when Saturn and Neptune come together, which it is co-present in Pisces, it is the dissolution of boundaries. So in your 11th house, this can also be like maybe you become the leader of your group, or you are going to be interested in like different belief systems, and as a result of that follow different groups, or just your hopes and wishes have changed over time. So maybe you've already experienced that with the eclipses happening in your 11th house of like, is this what I really want to do? Like, maybe I don't want to do that anymore. Maybe your groups and communities have already changed drastically with these eclipses. But overall, I think this transit is going to be way more supportive for you specifically because, like I said, like if you have your ascendant degree in Gemini, like at 0 to 1 degree, you're already trining Pluto right now. And then when Saturn and Neptune move into Aries, like around July and August, it will sextile you, which is wow, super lovely. I just want to see if I missed anything. Oh, yes, the retrogrades. Now, finally, there will be a Venus retrograde this year that will be again in your 11th house. So you want to look out for March and April of 2025. There will be massive action in your career sector of Pisces, the 10th house, and the 11th house in Aries. And Venus will go retrograde here in March 1st to April 12th, from 10 degrees of Aries to 24 Pisces. And at the same time, Mercury will go retrograde from April 15th to April 7th, from 9 Aries to 26 Pisces. So the Venus and Mercury retrograde are happening at the same time in your 11th house. So like I said, the eclipses might have changed your orientation towards groups of friends, communities, your hopes and your wishes. And then with Saturn and Neptune going here again, like some kind of disillusion of structures and boundaries. It can also affect, like, Neptune is a collective planet, right? So how that is internalized individually is also like as within, so without, right? Like your sense of authority, like your sense of ownership of your own life could come out to play, which then reflected back in your community, it's like then you're attracted to different people. Venus is in its depression in the sign of Aries because Venus wants to form bonds. Venus wants to love and its beauty, right? It has its home sign in Taurus and Libra. But when it's in a Mars ruled sign, Venus wants to be independent. Venus wants to take action. And that's not necessarily how Venus wants to act. And Mercury retrograde in this area too, there could be a lot of reflection on your bonds and who you surround yourself with. Mercury rules you. It's your chart ruler. And so automatically every Mercury retrograde you are affected by, because you are ruled by Mercury. So yeah, I think during this Mercury and Venus retrograde that happens in March to April, you could really be contemplating around the relationships that you decide to form and the kind of people that you want to surround yourself with. And let's see if there's anything else. Yeah, I think for you, the biggest transit is Jupiter in your first house, then Uranus moving into your first house, and the eclipses happening in your 4th and 10th. And I honestly think that if you've had any difficulty like rising up in your career or gaining more resources in order for you to do your mission here on Earth, you will find that 2025, if you've been doing the inner work, obviously, you will find that the transits are a lot more supportive in what you want to do. And it's really time for you to shine, Gemini risings. Like, this is the time for you to speak out, write, start a podcast, like get your ideas out there, because clearly you have been doing a lot of inner work. You've been contemplating a lot. And it's time to put all of these things into action so that you are supported in terms of resources to do your mission. So good luck with 2025, and I will see you at the monthly horoscopes. Bye. Cancer risings, this is your 2025 astrology forecast for 2025. So this is your forecast if you are a Cancer rising and a Cancer sun secondarily, but listening for your rising sign is the most accurate, as that will indicate the houses and areas of your life where the transits will activate you and the different people in your life. If you don't know your birth time, you can definitely look at your sun sign. So if you are here, then your Cancer sun, and place it in the first house. So the most exciting transit for you in 2025 has to be Jupiter moving into the sign of Cancer. And it's because this is personally my most favorite transit of 2025, because Jupiter is exalted in the sign of Cancer. And Jupiter is able to grow and receive and expand in the way that Cancer allows it to, in the most exalted form. So Jupiter will move into your first house on June 9th. And so you want to look at your ascendant degree, because the first, I guess, half of the sign will experience this in 2025, and the second half of the sign will experience this more in 2026. But nonetheless, like if you are a Cancer rising, Cancer is your first house. So this is really wonderful, especially after having Mars retrograding in your first house. That can't be easy because Mars is fallen in the sign of Cancer. So I would like to hear from you, like what that experience has been like, because that could not have been easy. But whatever Mars is doing to um, aggravate you, trigger you, inflame you, and maybe what Mars has been doing actually is for you to have the courage to stand up to some abusive situations or people that you have been taking advantage of you, because ultimately Mars is about taking action and having the courage to move in ways that are more aligned for you. But obviously, it's not an easy transit. And so, whatever Mars is doing, Jupiter will move here in the middle of 2025 to kind of like soothe it, heal it, repair it, and ultimately allow you to grow in ways that are more supportive for you. So I just wanted to mention that. So let's start with the Mars retrograde. So the first opposition between Mars and Pluto was November 3rd of 2024. And Pluto has been in your seventh house for 16 years, since 2008. So how have your one-on-one partnerships or your marriage partner, business partner transformed in the last 16 years? And that Mars opposing Pluto on November 3rd, so it was at the final degree of Pluto, that was definitely activating you and the other person. So Mars will re-enter the sign of Cancer January 6th. So it'll re-enter your first house. But before that, on January 3rd, Mars in Leo will oppose Pluto in Aquarius. So Mars has been in your second house. Pluto is now in your eighth house for 20 years. And these are your financial houses, Leo and Aquarius. So when Mars is in your second house and Pluto is in your eighth house, topics around finances, around resources, around how you give and receive money or resources, what you value are going to be like at the top of your mind, right? The second house is also your self-worth, what you value, and what you spend your money on. So the second house being in Leo, I don't know if you've experienced this during the retrograde, but maybe you were like cutting, maybe you were spending a lot during this time, or you were budgeting and you were cutting a lot of the things that maybe subscriptions, maybe the things that you were spending on because you're like, oh, we have to be more on a budget. And, you know, Pluto being in your eighth house, the eighth house is how you receive money from other people, your partner's money. And Pluto will be here transforming this area of your life for 20 years. So the eighth house is also the occult and magic and transformation. So this is also a time when you might be interested in those topics. But in any case, the second opposition will be on January 3rd. And the last one, when Mars will be going direct, is in April. So yeah, Mars in Cancer can bring up some inflammation. It can bring up some anger and triggering, more specifically from the other person, since Mars was opposing Pluto in your seventh house. But now Pluto is in your eighth house. And yeah, so just watch out for how you deal with your sacred rage, your sacred anger, and how you're able to transmute that. I don't personally believe we should get rid of anger. I don't personally believe that it's a negative emotion, but it shows us something. It shows us where there's an injustice. It shows us where we feel like we've been taken advantage of, or we feel like there's an imbalance somewhere. So every retrograde is a time for reflection. So again, it moving through your second and first house, this has to do with you, your value, your worth, and how that anger can be transmuted then to take action from a place of courage and a place of bravery. Now, Mars rules your 10th house of career and your public persona and your legacy, and your 5th house of children, romance, and hobbies, and your overall joy. So those topics of those houses might have come into play during this Mars retrograde, and how maybe during this time, like, you need to just like have more fun, like, where did your fun go? And maybe you're rethinking about your career and the direction you want to take, especially since the North Node and the eclipses have been happening in your 10th house, and Chiron, the wounded healer, has been there. In 2025, we are going to experience a lot of Aries action. So this sense of like your legacy and your career and like what you are known for is definitely going to be at the forefront of your mind. So I just wanted to let you know about that. Let me see if I want to talk about that now. Well, you are ruled by the moon, since the ruler of Cancer is the moon. So the eclipses are going to start happening in your 3rd and 9th houses. So the North Node in Aries is moving from your 10th to your 9th house of Pisces, and the South Node is moving from the 4th, your house, your home, your family, to the 3rd house. So maybe during the last 18 months of the Aries Libra eclipses, like, your home life, your relationship life, to your parents and your family has been in a conflictual has been in a conflict with your sense of career. And like, maybe a lot of Cancer risings have wanted to pursue more of their career. Maybe you wanted to become an entrepreneur, but because you have a family, because you have a mortgage, like, you are limited to doing all that you can in that area of your life. So the last Aries eclipse, the solar eclipse, will be on March 29th, when you are having a new beginning, essentially, because solar eclipses are new moons in your career sector. But then the next day, on March 30th, Neptune will enter the sign of Aries. On May 24th, Saturn will enter the sign of Aries. And then we're going to have a Venus, and we're going to have a Mercury retrograde in the sign of Aries. And this is all happening between March and May. So for Cancer risings, what is your career? Like, the career is a huge zoomed out overall picture of your legacy and what you want to be known for. It's not necessarily how you make money in your work, but they can all intersect and they're all related. So your 2nd, 6th, and 10th houses are like the houses of basically how you make money and like your wealth. And if you're fortunate enough, they can all intersect. But for most people in capitalism, they don't. So the 10th house is the highest point of our chart. And if you have your midheaven in Aries and it's ruled by that Mars retrograde, right? You're probably thinking and contemplating about, how can I make money? How can I show up more in my career so that, I make impact in some meaningful way here. And since Neptune and Saturn are moving into your 10th house, a very public sector, I can see a lot of Cancer risings becoming more of an authority figure or a leader of their industries, because that is a significant transit moving through such a public area of our lives, the 10th house. So, like I mentioned, Venus will retrograde in Aries in your 10th house. And Venus is said to be in its depression in the sign of Aries because Aries is the planet of love and beauty. And in its home sign of Taurus and Libra, it wants to form bonds and it wants to, like, you know, ooh, lovey dovey, right? But in a Mars ruled sign like Aries, which is about separation and independence and action, Venus kind of stumbles here. Venus wants to like do its own thing. Venus wants to like, it kind of, it kind of wants to be wild a little bit, and move towards its desires. I'm trying not to gender Venus as like a she, but at the same time, Mercury will also be retrograde in the sign of Aries, and this is happening in March. And so something, again, is closing its chapter with the nodes moving away from your 10th house, but then also beginning at the same time. Like some new cycles are happening in your Aries house of your career. Now, Chiron, the wounded healer, has been here since 2019. And there's, when Chiron is in the sign of Aries, it's like a wounding around leadership or a wounding around being the pioneer and the authority of your own life. So some Cancer risings, you might have felt like, well, who am I? I can't chart my own path, or I can't be that entrepreneur. Whatever your story is, the story is changing. Hopefully it's changing through your own inner work. But like I said, I think that Mars retrograde in your first house is really digging up and dredging up fears around your own stories around yourself. And the Mars retrograde is really allowing you to have the courage to step up and be the leaders that you are meant to be. So the next ingress, that's a pretty big deal of 2025, is Uranus in Gemini. It will move into your 12th house on July 7th. So the 12th house is a house of the unseen realms. It's the house of losses and fears. It's the house of liberation because it is a moksha house in Vedic astrology. But it is also a place where we want to be more solitary, where we need to be like resting and restoring our energy. So Jupiter has been here since May of 2024 and will still be there until June 9th of 2025. And so Jupiter has been expanding this area of your life at the 12th house. And as somebody who has Jupiter natally in her 12th house, this is a signature of like being interested in the occult, of dreams, of the things in society or things in life that are hidden, right? And so Uranus coming here, Uranus is a planet of revelation, of awakening, of change. So a lot of Cancer risings might get more interested in just things that like they just weren't interested in before. There's a whole other realm of like astrology and tarot and mysticism and occult. And you could start getting interested in just like the mysteries of the universe with this transit. Uranus's transit is 7 years. But by the fall of 2025, Neptune will re-enter the sign of Pisces on October 22nd. Saturn will re-enter the sign of Pisces on September 1st, and Uranus will re-enter the sign of Taurus on November 7th. So it's like this little glimpse for a moment when Neptune, Saturn, and Uranus are in their new signs, that they'll all be sextile to each other. And it's a little glimpse as to what that transit will be for you from 2026 and beyond. So just pay attention to what happens to your life when Uranus enters Gemini on July 7th, because that will give you clues as to what this is all about. Again, Jupiter already has been here expanding this area of your life. And Jupiter being here also, because it rules your ninth house of Pisces and also your sixth house of Sagittarius, this could just mean that you want to like travel to an ashram, you want to go on retreats, meditation retreats, you're more into spirituality in some way. And that also might be the case too, because Saturn is in your ninth house. And so is Neptune. And whenever I see people having Saturn transits in the ninth house, you either walk away from a religion or spiritual practice or philosophy that you were in currently and interested in a different religion or philosophy. Or a lot of people who have Saturn natally in the ninth house like don't believe in anything, or they don't like believe in astrology, for example, because the ninth house is the house of astrology. But because Neptune is here and it's in the sign of Pisces, and then the North Node is moving here, I feel like you're going to be more interested in different spiritual modalities. You might be interested in traveling to foreign lands, as that is also what a Jupiter in the 12th and Jupiter ruling Pisces in your ninth can indicate as well. So I can see a lot of Cancer risings traveling to like India and traveling to, I just say India because when the eclipses were happening for me, when the North Node was in my ninth house and the South Node was in my third house between 2017 and 2018 is when I actually studied Reiki, and then I traveled to India to study yoga, the birthplace of yoga in Rishikesh, India. So, and like I mentioned, the North, I have Jupiter natally in my 12th house. So I just became super obsessed with just learning the different modalities of spirituality and being very interested in like everything. Like 2018 was when I learned Reiki, when I learned yoga, when I learned tarot, astrology, crystals, like you name it, I was like into it. And this can also help you because, again, you are ruled by the moon, and eclipses happen with the sun and the moon. Obviously, lunar eclipses being full moons and solar eclipses being new moons, that this can give you more insight into who you are and help you understand your soul's purpose, because the first, fifth, and ninth houses are your Dharma houses. They are related to your purpose here on earth. So that's exciting. And I just want to make sure that I didn't forget anything. So there is a very special transit of Pisces, the Neptune, and the North Node around, let me see the exact, it happens like in the spring. Okay. February 1st, there is a triple conjunction of Venus and Pisces conjunct Neptune and Pisces at 27 degrees, which is Venus's exaltation degree. Venus will also conjunct the North Node in Pisces at 28 degrees. And this is all happening again in your ninth house. The ninth house is like, you know, you really understanding like why you're here, your purpose through learning about spirituality and philosophy. And the ruler of the North Node, being Jupiter, is going to transit your 12th house until, like I mentioned, June 9th, when it moves into Cancer, your first house. But still, the ruler of the North Node in Pisces will be Jupiter exalted in Cancer, moving through your first house. So there will be an expansion of understanding of self through foreign lands and foreign travel, through learning more about God and the universe or goddess, whatever you might like you want to call source energy. And because Jupiter, like I mentioned, is in the 12th house, you might need to be you might find yourself that you need to be spending more time alone. You need to like study these things in solitude. So you might also, as a result, change the way that you interact with people as the South Node is moving through your third house, which is Virgo. So the third house is siblings, your neighborhood, your communication. And like I mentioned, when this was transiting my house, I was just traveling like all over the place. And yeah, like because I was traveling and I was kind of pursuing my own like um sense of understanding myself, I wasn't as close to my sister and I wasn't as close to my home or my family because I was traveling so much. So I mean, you might have already experienced this with the South Node in Libra transiting your fourth house of family and home. And the eclipse is happening in the fourth house. And then now the eclipse is happening in the third house. You could literally have moved in the last 18 months, for example. I just want to make sure that I got everything. Okay, so yeah, the biggest transit for you, like I mentioned, is Jupiter moving through your first house in the middle of 2025. And then all of the Aries action happening in your 10th house. It's really exciting. I ultimately believe Cancer risings are coming into themselves through spirituality, through, again, believing and having courage in themselves and showing up in a bigger way in whatever you're doing, right? Like, remember that Aries is all about taking action and taking a risk, even if it's the unknown. Because I could just tell, like, Cancer risings, Cancer is all about safety and security and home, right? So, Cancer risings, you might have felt that you need to have a plan B, or you have to feel safe first before you take action. But I think Mars moving through your first house is getting you to feel and be more uncomfortable with the unknown and to be brave and to take the first step. So good luck, Cancer risings, and I will see you in your monthly horoscopes. Bye. Hello, Leo risings. Welcome to your 2025 astrology forecast. And I hope you listen to the beginning because you want to listen to this if you are a Leo rising. And if you don't know your birth time or you want to listen to your sun sign, then this means that you are a Leo sun and you want to put your Leo sun in the first house. Again, this is a general overview of the horoscopes for 2025. This is not indicative of everybody's transits and timing because you all have specific and very unique natal charts. And so take this all with a grain of salt. If you want to go deeper, you can always book a reading with me. So I think the biggest thing that's been happening for you as of late is the Mars retrograde in Leo transiting your first house. And so if you have a Leo rising from like 0 to 7 degrees, you've been definitely feeling Mars over your ascendant. And Mars over your ascendant can make you feel fiery. It can make you feel like angrier than normal. It can make you feel more irritated, more aggressive. And you want to make sure that you have a healthy outlet for it. So I always recommend people who have Mars over their ascendant to exercise. And I know not everybody likes to do that, but you need to find some kind of activity to release anger. And I don't think you should get rid of anger because anger is a very important emotion. It shows us when there's an injustice. It shows us when something has to change. So it's a very important emotion to feel and to recognize. But when you bottle it up, it's when your body can be overrun with like heat. And just from my personal experience as a fire rising sign as well, and also being an Aries. And whenever like I get really angry and I don't like have a releasing point, I always get rashes because rashes mean in Chinese medicine that there's too much heat in the body. So I recommend you sweat. I recommend you scream, go to a rage room, do something because Mars has also been opposing Pluto. And now Mars will be in your sign opposing Pluto, which will transit your seventh house of one-on-one partnerships for 20 years. So on January 3rd, like right away, Mars retrograde in Leo will oppose Pluto in Aquarius at 1 degree. Now, this is the second square. The first square happened on November 3rd, but it was Cancer. Mars was in Cancer opposing Pluto in Capricorn at 29 degrees. So Pluto was transiting your sixth house for 16 years since 2008. And Pluto is not necessarily like, I would say when malefics go through malefic houses like the sixth house, it was a lot about like your work, your health, and health, like the overall health of your body and your life, right? So that includes your physical health, mental health, spiritual health, emotional health, financial health, health in all aspects of your life. And so Pluto was trying to transform that. Pluto was trying to get you to have more of a routine to allow your dreams and the reality of your physical life to be more pleasant and livable. A lot of you might have changed what you do for work during this time. I mean, it's 16 years, so like, I would hope so. You know, you're not, some of you aren't boomers and, you know, that generation stayed at their jobs for like 20 plus years. But I feel like that kind of trend is not as common anymore. And so Pluto has like left that area of your life officially and has moved into your seventh house, which is an angular house, and is going to change the way you relate to people on a one-on-one basis. And so Mars is the planet of, at the end of the day, courage and taking action. It is the yang masculine expression of all of the planets. And Mars is a very important planet because it is what really drives us forward. It's like our desires are what, you know, we should take action on ultimately. And so Mars rules your fourth house of your home, your family, your ancestors. It's the root of your chart. And Mars also rules Aries, which is your ninth house of philosophy, spirituality, beliefs. It's the house of God. So Mars transiting Cancer as a part of this retrograde, some of you might have had some old childhood wounding that might have come up, childhood trauma, memories from the past, or you might have moved homes since, again, Mars connects your fourth and your ninth house. Some of you might have traveled a lot during this time. Some of you might have been interested in occult or like mysterious, like the mysteries of the universe. And maybe Mars also being here has made your dreams more vivid, has maybe made you want to fight for something that, like fighting for prison justice or people who are often forgotten about in society also is the 12th house. But the 12th house too is like a need to be more isolated, a need to have more alone time to recover and rest. So depending again on your personal placements, Mars is more of an active sign, but in the sign of Cancer, which is in its fall, Mars kind of acts a little weird, you know. And I don't mean good or bad. I just mean Mars can't do its normal thing of like taking action and being fiery and impulsive as it would in the sign of Aries or let's say Scorpio. But in the sign of Cancer, it has to deal with all of these emotional feelings that come up. Mars in Cancer is also the placement about protection and family and home. So again, these topics might have come up during this time. But since Mars is currently transiting your first house and it will move back into Cancer on January 6th, you will kind of have like a little break of Mars transiting your first house, and it will move back into the 12th house until April. Let me see the exact date when it moves back there. Mars will re-enter Leo on April 18th. So that is like pretty much like the biggest thing that's happening. I would say topics around finance and your resources and how you make money and your values are really going to be at the forefront of your mind in the next 18 months, if they have not already, since Saturn is transiting your 8th house. So Saturn is the planet of limitation, restriction, boundaries, and borders. And so when Saturn transits a house in our chart, it represents an area of your life. And the 8th house in astrology is other people's money or shared resources. So because Saturn rules your 7th house of one-on-one partnerships, this could literally be like, just for example, if you got divorced, okay, and like you are you're sharing or not sharing resources with your marital partner, marital spouse. And so your financial situation changes as a result of that, as of that severing, as of that divorce. Or on the opposite side, if you do get married during this time, then your resources would have changed as a result of you forming a contractual partnership with somebody. And the 7th house doesn't just mean our marriage partner, but any one-on-one business relationship, as a 7th house also relates to contracts. So any contractual partnership is in the 7th house. And because Pluto's there, something might be happening to your partner. And as a result, that affects how you receive money as well through the 8th house. But Saturn's transit is 3 years through a sign. And so we're kind of like in the midway point. Saturn will move into your 9th house in May, and Neptune will move into your 9th house of Aries in March. And so you're going to get a couple of clues as to what Saturn and Neptune's journey will be in your 9th house. And this has never happened, these two planets being together in Aries in our lifetime. So this is going to be new for all of us. But in the meantime, you know, when planets go to a new sign, they kind of go back during the retrograde and before they officially go into your 9th house of Aries for a couple of years. Neptune's transit is 14 years. Saturn's transit is 3 years, starting in 2026. But ultimately, it will be more of a supportive transit for you because the 9th house is in a superior trine to Leo, since it is a fellow fire sign. But again, Saturn being here, it's like, you know, some form of income has shrunk in terms of you receiving money from other people. This could have been through your, I guess, like, if you are an influencer or if you receive money from fans or a community, you could have had some growth as Jupiter in Gemini was moving through your 11th. And then a push-pull kind of dynamic with Jupiter ruling your eighth. Ultimately, though, Saturn at the end of its transit always gives a gift, as does every planet at the end of the sign. So if you've been feeling some like crunchiness around receiving money, or the topic of finances has been very prevalent in your mind, I would look forward to Venus's transit through your eighth house. This starts happening in the beginning of January, and then there will be a retrograde between Aries and Pisces. And so Venus usually spends like just a couple of like maybe like less than a month in a sign, but because of the retrograde, Venus will be back in your eighth house after Venus stations retrograde in Aries. That starts in March. So when Venus is in Pisces, Venus is exalted, and exalted planets always bring out the best in that planet. And so Venus loves being in Pisces. So again, like whatever crunchiness you might have felt, or restriction, or a drying up of your finances during Saturn's transit, I think Saturn is just trying to get you to have some kind of understanding or discipline or responsibility around how you receive money as well. Since Saturn rules your sixth house of work, again, health, and your partnerships. Maybe Saturn is trying to get you to be more discerning around who you work with, and actually receive what you are worth, standing up for yourself with Mars opposing Pluto, right? Like, I could see a lot of Leo risings doing that during this Mars retrograde. So, like I mentioned, Saturn will, well, let's first talk about the last eclipse in Aries. So the last solar eclipse in Aries happens in your ninth house on March 29th. It is a partial eclipse because the nodes would have changed to Pisces and Virgo on January 11th. And this will be at 9 degrees of Aries. And so you had a solar eclipse here in April of 2024. It was April 8th. And the ninth house, and having the sun here, the sun has its joy in the ninth house, was very auspicious. Something about your relationship to the cosmos, your relationship to God, Goddess, the universe, your ideals, your philosophy of life, your spiritual practices would have been starting a new cycle at this time. And so this is the last eclipse, again, in the sign of Aries, which solar eclipses are new moons. And again, because the ninth house is a superior trine to you, and you are ruled by the sun, this is a brand new beginning about how you look at life. Like, what do you believe in? What do you believe about yourself? And what is your ultimate purpose, right? Because the ninth house is a Dharma house. The first, fifth, and ninth are Dharma houses. This really leads us to our purpose and like why we're here. And so the next day on March 30th, after the solar eclipse, Neptune will ingress into the sign of Aries, and Neptune is about our ideals and our dreams and our visions and the higher ideals of how we govern our life. In the sign of Aries, though, Aries is the sign of war. Yes, it's like fighting for what you believe in. Aries is the pioneer, the leader. So that transit will be 14 years. But Neptune will go back into Pisces at the end of the year around the fall. And then I guess going to Saturn, then Saturn will move into the ninth on May 24th. So Saturn spends about 3 years in a sign. And so you want to look back to like 1996 to 1999 ish. If you are old enough to remember what happened during that time, this was the last time Saturn was in your ninth house of Aries. And yeah, you want to pay attention to what happens around May to like the fall, like September, because that will be your first glimpses of what your Neptune and Saturn transit will be all about. And so the nodes, the reason why I feel like your finances will shift or your having to focus on your poverty consciousness and like some of the belief systems that you inherited from your family or ancestors, or just like really reevaluating what abundance means to you, is because the North Node in Pisces will move to your eighth house, and your South Node of Virgo will move into your second house of your own resources as your resources and finances on January 11th. And then the eclipses will start happening. And on March 14th, you will have a lunar eclipse in the sign of Virgo. And a lunar eclipse is a full moon. So the moon will be in Virgo and it will be opposing the Pisces stuff in your eighth house. Again, these are endings and beginnings around your finances and the other person's finances. The eighth house also is like taxes, insurance, investments, and it's also the occult and the mysteries of the world. And it also is symbolic of death. Don't worry, it's not going to be like literal death for a lot of people. I have my North Node here natally, but it is like a metaphorical death of some kind. Like some part of you will have to die. An old belief system, like I said, old limiting beliefs around money, around finances, around what money really is. When I was going through my nodal return at 36, so that's when the nodes go back to their natal position. And so I was having eclipses in my second and eighth houses. It was my nodal return. It was my Jupiter return. Like 2018 and 2019 were so pivotal for me because it really made me question some of the belief systems I inherited from my parents growing up around money and like and work. Like I have immigrant parents who came here in their 20s with all sorts of trauma from their own home country, coming here to New York as young people, not knowing the language. And they instilled in me this fear around money and scarcity and having to work really hard. And of course, we live in late stage capitalism, so you have to work to exist here. But some of those things I started thinking about, like, questioning them, like questioning, working hard, working a lot doesn't actually equate to wealth because then so many people would be wealthy. So is it a mindset thing? Is it an energetic thing? So those were just some of the things that I started thinking about during that time. And so for you, these things might come up as you start having eclipses here. And it's a South Node eclipse in the second. So this is like a purging of like, it could be a purging of your own limiting belief systems, right? Because it's Virgo too. It's your thoughts. Mercury rules Virgo. And just like your philosophy around money and what it really is for, So that's a big deal because, yes, you'll start having eclipses in these houses for the next 18 months to 2 years. The next big transit is, well, there's two. Jupiter will move into your 12th house starting in June 9th. So you've been enjoying Jupiter in Gemini in your 11th house, which is where Jupiter has its joy. Jupiter likes being in the 11th house because Jupiter likes to expand. And you have been expanding your community, you have been expanding your networks. And also, you might have had some grand visions of like long term goals and dreams. But like I mentioned, Jupiter has been kind of at this like square with Saturn for the last like year, and it's going to continue until 2025. But whatever you've been trying to grow in your 11th house, Saturn has kind of been like, no, are you sure? Are you committed to this? You know, it's been kind of annoying. But Jupiter is also, Jupiter is in its depression or debilitated in the sign of Gemini. So Jupiter wants to have these like grand visions and grand ideas, but Gemini, just like Virgo, is focusing on the little details, right? It's overloaded with data and information. And so this isn't necessarily where Jupiter thrives in the sign of Gemini, but when Jupiter moves into the sign of Cancer, this is Jupiter's exaltation. This is what I love about 2025, because 2024, we had a lot of planets in their fall or depression. Like Mars being in Cancer, Jupiter being in Gemini, this Mercury retrograde we had in Sagittarius. Like those weren't very supportive transits, but they have their own medicine, right? I'm not saying that planets in their fall or depression are weak or they're bad. It's just they were trying to get us to tap into a different medicine that these planets have in these specific signs. But like I said, exalted planets bring out the best in the signs that the planets that are in exalted signs give them the best of that expression. So Jupiter being in the sign of Cancer is able to grow in an intentional and slow and steady way. It's a very fertile transit. So whatever Mars was doing to your 12th house during this Mars retrograde, Jupiter is going to come here in June and just kind of like repair and heal and expand this area of your life. So you might, again, be interested in the unseen realms, the dream realm, things that are hidden. You might be really interested in like being alone and going on a retreat. You might be interested in the occult since Jupiter rules your 8th house. You might be interested, I don't know, all of a sudden in children because Jupiter also rules your 5th house of Sagittarius, or some like hobby or something from your childhood might be coming up to the surface during this transit. It's my favorite transit of 2025. And then the last big thing is Uranus moving into Gemini on July, I think it's July 7th. And Uranus's transit is 7 years. So Uranus has been in Taurus in your 10th house for 7 years, since 2018. And that is like breaking free. It's breaking up some stagnancy around your career and what you're known for. Okay. So since you are a fixed sign, you are a Leo, and you're very like stable, fixed on growing your brand, growing whatever it is you're growing. Uranus was there trying to like break you free of something, trying to get you to be a little bit more adventurous or trying different things. And that might have made you feel a little like uncomfortable because it was squaring you depending on like the degree of your ascendant. So if you are like a later degree Leo rising, like 20 to 29, Uranus is squaring you right now. Uranus is going to move into the sign of Gemini in your 11th house. So all the things I said about Jupiter and Gemini in your 11th, now Uranus is here to kind of shake things up. Now, ultimately, I see this as positive for you since the 11th house is in a sextile relationship to you, which is supportive. And Jupiter will be making a trine relationship to your 3rd house of Libra and your 7th house of Aquarius, which is lovely for forming new bonds, communication. If you ever felt like you wanted to like host be the leader of a community or host a podcast or something like that, or do some writing projects, this is a beautiful transit for that, since Uranus is like in the sign of Gemini. It's like technology, it's using different forms of communication. It's a very lovely transit. From September on, September to November, though, Uranus will move back into the sign of Taurus. Neptune will move back into the sign of Pisces, and Saturn will move back into the sign of Pisces. So it's kind of eerie how the astrology of December of 2025 is very similar to the astrology of December 2024, because all of the outer planets, except for Pluto, will move back into their previous signs. So again, you get this like preview of what these outer planets in more masculine yang signs will be about. So just pay attention to that. But ultimately, I think this is really about you finding your groove around how you can do something unique, do something different, and get paid for it, and have collaborative partnerships with people who are, I don't like to say like-minded, because we don't want to fall into the trap of groupthink, but heart-minded people who share the same moral values as you. And something that I've had to learn over the last year with the South Node in Libra going through my 11th house is that you don't necessarily have to like your community. You don't have to agree on everything. As long as you have the same mission and the same moral compass, then we all have to work in tandem with each other, because everyone's coming from a different place, of different historical background, different perspective, different educational background. And so the more we can kind of like put down our ego and say, you know, we have to work towards a common goal. And I say this with love and peace to all the Leo risings, but if there is one sign that tends to lean more into their ego of wanting themselves to shine, it's Leos, because you are ruled by the sun. And so Leos in their dysfunction want to get external validation from others. But the medicine of Leo is when you realize the uniqueness and individual like specialness and magic within, and you shine that light out instead of the other way around. And so both Leo and Aquarius, being sister signs, are both about individuality and authenticity. But the ways in which Leo does it is to follow their heart and follow what their inner compass is telling them. I mean, all of the signs do, right? But because you are ruled by the sign, you want to make sure that you're being a leader and you're following your heart from a place of your higher self, and not from a place of ego, and not from a place of needing validation from other people. So that, I think, is your 2025 horoscope. I wish you all the luck, and I will see you at the monthlies. Bye. Hello, Virgo risings. This is your 2025 astrology forecasts or horoscopes. And you want to watch this if you are a Virgo rising and if you are a Virgo sun, secondly, especially if you don't know your birth time, you can put your sun in the first house and listen accordingly. So the biggest transit for you, I would say, is that the nodes are switching from the North Node in Aries and the South Node in Libra to the North Node in Pisces and the South Node in Virgo. And this will be in your first and seventh houses, which are a big deal. And this happens on January 11th. So let's backtrack a little, because for the last 18 months, the North Node was in your eighth house of other people's finances, of death, either literal or metaphorical, of how you receive resources from other people, and also magic and occult and transformation. The South Node was moving through Libra in your second house of your finances, your resources, and like the second and eighth houses are your financial axes. So the last eclipse in Aries, which is your eighth house, is going to happen on March 14th, I believe. Wait, let's go back. I have so many dates in my head that like it's going to explode. Okay, so yes, I was right. March 29th will be the last solar eclipse, which is a new moon in your eighth house. But the nodes would have already shifted to the North Node in your Pisces seventh house, and the South Node moving through your first house of Virgo. The North Node is like it's the head of the dragon. It's trying to manifest something in this physical reality, whereas the South Node is purging, releasing, alchemizing some limiting beliefs. It's very spiritual. So it's like very hard for me to describe. But when I was going through this, when the South Node was going through Sagittarius during the pandemic, essentially, I just remember my entire concept of myself just completely changed. Like everything that I believed about myself and how I navigated through the world just like shifted. And that was like 5 years ago. So it was like 2020, 2021, I believe. And that really catalyzed me into doing what I do now and having a better understanding of who I am. So I'm not saying it's the easiest transit, but what I am saying is that you are going to probably change in a way that you did not foresee. Because eclipses bring endings and beginnings and they expedite timelines. So the first house is you, Virgo. The seventh house in Pisces is the other. So this could be your one-on-one partnerships in terms of business, in terms of friendships, in terms of your marriage partner, if you have one, or a partner. So there's going to be an ending or a beginning in that facet of your life, or something will be going on with your spouse or marriage partner or partner that will obviously impact you in some way. Now, I've read for clients who have had this in their chart. They didn't necessarily like get separated or divorced, but it was another like renewal of their relationship. It was like a new cycle beginning in their relationship. So don't worry, like eclipses here doesn't mean that you're going to break up. But if your relationship is on shaky ground and it doesn't survive this eclipses, then you know that this is for the highest good of both of you. So new relationships can also come into your life as a result of the eclipses going through your seventh house. So that's like the biggest thing that's going on. And I would say that Jupiter in your 10th house of career has been expanding your public persona, your public life. And this might have been in conflict with your home life, your parents, and your partner, because Jupiter rules your fourth house of home, family, parents, ancestors, your roots, and your partnership house, Pisces, the seventh house. And because the mutable rising signs have Jupiter ruling two of their angular houses, this would have caused a T-square to you as well. So normally a Jupiter transit is very fortunate and lucky because Jupiter expands everything. It is the planet of luck and opportunity and protection. But because Jupiter is in its depression, it's debilitated in the sign of Gemini, which doesn't mean that it's weak. It doesn't mean that it's bad. It just means that Jupiter can't do its thing, right? Um, and it's been an ongoing square to Saturn in Pisces in your seventh house partnerships. So Saturn being here for the last like year and a half, and it's going to stay here until 2026. Saturn has been either making you more serious about your partnership, or your partner could be more detached during this time. But something is going on with your partner if you have one. If you don't have one, then that just means that maybe your relationships with other people have been a little more detached, have been a little more distant, or the opposite end of Saturn, right? Because Saturn is the planet of commitment and discipline. You've become more devoted, more, committed to this person. But regardless, this has been in a conflict square to your career house. And also because, again, Jupiter rules your fourth house of Sagittarius, something was not moving in the way that you wanted it to. It was like very slow growth. It was like every time you were expanding or growing in your career, it was like Saturn was like, no. Saturn was like, are you sure? Is this what you really want? But Jupiter and Saturn squares are very important because they do test our patience. They do test our commitment. And this is the opening square from that big Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in Aquarius in your sixth house of work and health, and your house of service, which is the sixth house, which is where Pluto is right now. So Pluto is transforming this area of your life. So I actually like Pluto here. You're going to be more mindful of your health. So because it's Pluto in Aquarius, you might be into like alternative forms of health. Like if you've never been interested in acupuncture before, all of a sudden you're interested in that. You might be interested in just like more healing things with technology. Like all of a sudden you're using like I don't know, you're using an app to track your steps. But whatever Pluto is doing, it's a longer transit. It's 20 years. But Pluto is trying to transform this area of your life, and your work might change as well. You might be into more like esoteric things, or things that you just like weren't interested in. All of a sudden Pluto comes here and it's like, hello, did you ever consider this? Aquarius is a sign of networks and community and revolution. And so again, it's something that you might just never have. It just never has crossed your mind until like recently. So, okay. With that being said, Mars is in its retrograde still as we move into 2025. And the retrograde was covering two signs, Cancer and Leo. Cancer is your 11th house of groups, community, and your long-term wishes and goals. And Leo is your 12th house. The 12th house in astrology is all the things that are unseen and hidden. It's a very mystical house. So the 12th house, with Mars being here in its retrograde, you might have felt more inclined to be alone, isolated, heal, restore your energy. You might have had vivid dreams, but Mars only made it up to 7 degrees. So if you have any personal placements in Leo, you want to look at the degrees of it, because you might not have felt it as much just because it only made it to 7 degrees of Leo. And yeah, the first major aspect is Mars in Leo will oppose Pluto in the sign of Aquarius. And this is going through your 12th and 6th house axes. This happens on January 3rd. The first time it happened was November 3rd, but this was in the signs of Cancer and Pluto was going through your fifth house. So this is like the first like major aspect between Mars and Pluto, with Pluto being there now like for the next 20 years. And so this could be more, again, with Mars moving through your 12th, this could be more mysterious in nature. Like you might not even realize it's this transit with all other things going on, but this could have something to do with your fears, something that keeps you trapped in your mind, and as a like spiritual transit, it's getting you to face your fear in some way. Like especially if the Plutonian person is like a coworker who's bullying you, or I would say like someone in your life. You know, Mars is trying to get you to stand up for yourself. It's trying to get you to be courageous and face your fears. And in some cases, stand up to your abuser. This is a general reading for Virgo rising. So like just take what resonates, because it's not going to resonate for everybody, but these are just set general significations of these planets and in these houses. I would also be very mindful of your health, especially your mental health, but also your physical health, because the sixth house in astrology is really about tending to the day-to-day routines that support our physical body, and the physical body being your mental health, spiritual health, emotional health. And so you want to make sure that all of those are in check, because the sixth house is in conjunct to the first, which is why in ancient astrology, it was the house of bad fortune. Because if you do not pay attention to your health every day, that's when health ailments start to happen, right? But the sixth house is also the house of service. This is where you burn up karmic debt in this lifetime. So a lot of Virgo risings might be like really into some form of activism. You might be speaking out for people who are marginalized, or people who are like forgotten in our society. I did a video like about like the 12th house in regards to when Luigi Mangione was held in that Pennsylvania prison, and a reporter was talking to the inmates there. Like that's a very 12th house thing. Prisons, libraries, ashrams, hospitals, those are all in the realm of the 12th house. It's places in our society that are there. We just don't see them on a day-to-day basis unless you personally have been to prison. And so Mars activating that area of your chart, it's like, are you like actively speaking out, or are you joining some like activism group to advocate for these kinds of people? Again, opposing Pluto in Aquarius, it's like these people who are being silenced, who are being ignored. I can very much see that with Virgo risings. Okay, so there are multiple outer planets moving into different signs in 2025, which is why it makes next year so significant. So Pluto, again, like I mentioned, is going to be in Aquarius for 20 years. Jupiter is going to move into Cancer on June 9th. And this is one of my favorite transits because Jupiter is exalted in the sign of Cancer. Now, what I mentioned before about Jupiter being in its depression, or not in its like, it's not at home. So it's like, it doesn't know how to act sometimes, you know, but Jupiter in Cancer is able to grow, is able to expand, is able to bring luck in the realm of Cancer, which is all about birth and nurturing and children and motherhood. So being in your 11th house, this is where Jupiter has its joy. Jupiter loves being in the 11th house. And so you want to take advantage of this transit, and it's going to start happening June 9th until like mid mid um mid year of 2026 because it's a 1 year transit. And so you might during this time like really want to find your people. You might want to join a group or an organization. You might want to lead that group. Um, but whatever the case might be, like whatever Mars retrograde is doing to your 11th house, it's like kind of like Mars has a severing quality, right? Because Mars is the planet of war, it's the planet of action. Um, and maybe you have let go of a lot of groups or friends or like people that you've known for a long time. And then Jupiter comes here and is like repairing and healing and bringing people who are who have the same aligned values as you together, which is lovely. I love that for you. Um, on March on March 30th, Saturn will move into your eighth house. And this is a little tricky because, again, the eighth house is other people's finances and other people's money. So, whatever is going on with like what was going on with the eclipses when the eclipses were happening in Aries and Libra, this is putting more attention to that eighth house because you're going to have a lot of action in the eighth house. So, what this tells me for Virgo risings is like you were meant to take some kind of action, take some kind of lead on really learning the art of receiving and reciprocity and what it means to give and receive. Okay. Because the eighth house is connected to the second house, which is your resources. And so there will be the last eclipse here, the solar eclipse, which is a new moon on March 29th. And then on March 30th, the next day, Neptune will move here. And then on I believe May 24th, Saturn will move into your eighth house. So this is like a little preview of what your Neptune and Saturn transit will be in your eighth house. Neptune's transit is 14 years. Saturn's transit is like 3 years of what that transit will mean for you. Again, it's something around finances. It's something around maybe your investments, something around how you receive money. Mars rules your third house of neighborhoods, communication. Some of you might be invested in real estate, just as an example, and this will, affect that. Because Mars rules the sign of Scorpio, which is your third house. And it also rules the third house is communication. So just keep those things in mind. And then Uranus. Okay, so Uranus has been transiting your ninth house for the last 7 years, so since 2018. And it's going to move into your 10th house of career and public persona on July 7th. So Uranus and Gemini in your 10th is maybe being more outspoken or changing the way you communicate, or because Jupiter has been here, right, for the last year. So it's been expanding that area of your life. Maybe you've like pivoted and you're talking about something else. And then Uranus coming here, it's like, oh yeah, this is what I'm bringing attention to. We are talking about this now. And as a result, I am pivoting my career. I'm no longer showing up as this, but this is my career now, for example. But Uranus is the planet of awakening and revelation, and it brings sudden changes. Since Uranus was discovered through a telescope, which was a human invention, maybe you might be like known for inventing something, or you might be known for something very unique and different. You want to pay attention because this is a big deal. Like Uranus moving into an angular house, like the 10th, that is like a very public, visible part of our chart. So whatever Jupiter and Gemini is doing right now is making the way for Uranus and Gemini. Okay, let me just make sure I got everything. So we talked about the eclipses happening in your first and seventh. This is a big deal. Then we talked about all of the activations in your Aries area of your chart, which is the eighth house. We talked about Neptune and Saturn moving into the eighth house. We talked about Uranus moving into the 10th. We talked about Gemini moving into the 11th. Mars retrograde from the 11th to the 12th. Anything else here? Okay. Yeah. So by the end of 2025, like September to November, Uranus will move back into Taurus, Saturn will move back into Pisces, Neptune will move back into Pisces. So by the end, like December of 2025, it's going to feel and look very similar to December of 2024 because we're getting this chance to integrate what our next decade and beyond will be about, because you will start to experience trines from your 10th, 2nd, and 6th. The second is your resources, your finances. And the 6th house is your work, your health. The 10th house is your career. So whatever you're going through, Virgo rising, in the next like 18 months with these eclipses, you are stepping up into a different version of yourself. Dare I say the highest version of yourself. And I'm really excited for you because I feel like a lot of Virgo risings. So the one thing that I would look out for is the traps of the Virgo self-judgment, perfectionism, and anxious thoughts leading to manifesting situations that don't actually happen, and also trusting yourself, trust your intuition. That is why Pisces is your opposite sign, because Pisces is the realm of no boundaries, of the unknown. And so the more you can integrate both the Virgo magic and the Pisces magic, I think the better you'll be, because what you'll notice about the eclipses is that the topics of you, the first house, and the topics of the other will come together in your eclipse story. But ultimately, I believe this is all to elevate you into the most aligned version of yourself. So thank you, Virgo risings, and good luck in 2025. Bye.